Chapter 902. Yi Guqin's physical body had indeed exceeded Yin Wufeng's expectations. However, in the Sword Dynasty, physical cultivators were not worthy of the spotlight. Cultivation level and swordsmanship were the basis of measuring a prodigy's strength. Yin Wufeng immediately unleashed his signature technique, the Nine Darkness Sword. The pitch-black sword radiance carried a destructive aura as it shot toward Yi Guqin. Even the surrounding lightning waves were parted. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed when he saw the ferocious sword technique. Yi Guqin pointed his sword at the sky. True energy burst out, forming a whirlwind that spread out. A dazzling silver sword radiance broke through the hole, as if it could sweep through the 9 heavens and the galaxy. It was the first move of the 3 ultimate holy swords, the star-shattering sword. Boom! The silver sword radiance and the pitch-black sword energy collided. They wore each other down, causing ripples to appear. The 3 ultimate holy swords. Han Lingxian, who was watching from the sidelines, muttered. Her eyes were dazed. The 3 ultimate holy swords of the Han family had actually unleashed such power in the hands of an outsider. Of course, Han Lingxian was not jealous. She was just happy for Yi Guqin. Bang! After the collision, both of their figures retreated. Yin Wufeng's expression was completely frozen. His gaze was fixed on Yi Guqin. If it was before, he would not have taken Yi Guqin seriously. But now, Yin Wufeng had unleashed his full strength, yet he still could not defeat his opponent. What did this mean? Although Yi Guqin's cultivation level was only at stage 3, his true strength was comparable to stage 9 prodigies like them. I don't believe it. Yin Wufeng's expression was as solemn as water. How could he be willing to fight to a draw with a nameless nobody? 9 heavenly fiend swords. Yin Wufeng changed his sword technique again and unleashed the Yin family's emperor-level sword technique. The 9 heavenly fiend swords had a total of 9 moves. Each move was stronger than the previous one. If the 9 moves were combined and superimposed, it would be even more powerful. Boom! Yin Wufeng directly displayed the first sword. Yi Guqin still used the star-breaking sword to block the attack. Then, the second and third sword strikes followed. Streaks of sword aura with dense killing intent swept out, slashing towards Yi Guqin. However, they were all blocked by Yi Guqin. Yin Wufeng slashed out 9 times in a row, but they were all blocked by Yi Guqin. How is this possible? The surrounding sky prides were all dumbfounded. This brat really has some skills. Shangguan Yan's small mouth was also agape, as if she had fallen into a dream. She was now rejoicing. Although she and Yi Guqin had a small conflict before, it was fortunate that they didn't fight. But he actually has such strength. Yushuang Yan could no longer remain calm. Yi Guqin's performance had far exceeded her expectations. Yin Wufeng's strength was even stronger than hers. Yushuang Yan realized that in her heart, there was a rare trace of regret. She regretted provoking Yi Guqin because of Yu Yuankue. Hua Xingjie's gaze froze. There was no longer any contempt on his face. Being able to contend with Yin Wufeng had already proven Yi Guqin's strength. Duguobai from Tianfeng Ridge can actually contend with Yin Wufeng. In that case, he really has the strength to be in the top 30 of the sword roll. Seeing the battle on the Thunder Prison Mountain, some of the spectating lords were surprised. Although the sky prides on the sword roll changed frequently, the top 30 sky prides rarely changed. As for Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the others, they had already gotten used to Yi Guqin's surprises. Sister Lingxian, you were right. Young Master Dugu is really a person who can create miracles, Qin Paisai murmured. Young Master Dugu's crisis is not over yet. Han Lingxian was still worried. Although Yi Guqin could contend with Yin Wufeng, there was still Yushuang Yan, Hua Xingjie, and the others at the side. How is this possible? How can you resist my sword move? 9 swords in 1, Sky Demon Void Shattering Sword. Yin Wufeng shouted loudly. True Qi surged as he slashed out 9 swords in succession. Then, the 9 swords overlapped and burst out an even more terrifying sword Qi, slashing down on Yi Guqin's head. Yi Guqin activated his true Qi, and the sword blade vibrated violently. He raised his sword vertically, and the tip of the sword drew an arc of light, like a lonely crescent moon. That magnificent and deep crescent sword light collided with Yin Wufeng's move. This was the second move of the three ultimate holy swords, Earth Moon Absolute Sword. Rumble. It was as if countless thunderbolts had exploded. Cracks appeared on the incomparably hard mountain that had been struck by lightning, and the mountain rocks were shattered. Under everyone's gazes, the Blue Moon Sword arc directly broke apart Yin Wufeng's sword move, and carried the remaining momentum as it fell towards Yin Wufeng. Yin Wufeng's complexion abruptly changed as he hastily raised his sword to block the attack. However, the impact of the attack caused him to cough up blood repeatedly as his figure flew backwards like a kite with its string cut. Following that, the impact of the lightning tide had charred his body black, and he had suffered heavy injuries. Yin Wufeng, ranked 23rd on the sword ranking, had been defeated. He was defeated by a dark horse. On the ship of Long River College, Elder Yin Li, who had just said that the winner was the king and the loser was the bandit, now had an extremely gloomy expression on his face. Yin Wufeng was the genius of their Yin family, but now he had been defeated by a dark horse in such a manner. This was really a disgrace to the Yin family. However, the people of the college were not allowed to interfere with the selection of the 5 academies. This was a rule that no one could violate. Even if Yin Li was unhappy, he could not interfere at this moment. Elder Hua Mo's expression was also slightly embarrassed. After all, he had looked down on Yi Guchen before, and even said that he would never accept Yi Guchen. However, Yi Guchen had defeated Yin Wufeng in the blink of an eye, which made him feel as if he had been slapped in the face. It would be impolite for Sacred Cliff College to reject such a good seedling. Bei Xian Elder was overjoyed when he saw this scene. In the past, Sacred Cliff College had always picked up the leftovers of other colleges. Those geniuses with real talent and potential were not very willing to join Sacred Cliff College. However, Bei Xian Elder was happy that Elder Hua Mo had personally pushed a genius who was comparable to the top 30 on the sword ranking to Sacred Cliff College. It's just the top 30 on the sword ranking. Our Tensei College has no shortage of geniuses. We can just accept the sword demon when the time comes, Elder Hua Mo said coldly. The smile on Bei Xian Elder's face disappeared when he heard this. With the talent that the sword demon had shown, it was possible that he would look down on Sacred Cliff College. On the Thunder Prison Mountain, Yin Wufeng's body was charred black, and the corners of his mouth and chin were covered in blood. He stared at Yi Guchen with an extremely cold gaze. Who are you? Yin Wufeng's expression was cold and stern. At the same time, he had some guesses in his heart. I didn't expect that we had misjudged you. You are not a nobody. Hua Xingjie also felt that something was wrong. If they still did not suspect Yi Guchen's identity at this time, they would be too stupid. Could it be? Yu Shuangyan also thought of something at the same time. Not only them, but the geniuses, lords, and people from the aristocratic families who were watching the battle from the sidelines also reacted. I remember that Dugubai seems to be from Tianfeng Ridge. You mean? Some of the lords' expressions suddenly froze. An unprecedented shock appeared in their eyes. It can't be. Many people's expressions were dull. At this moment, everyone, whether it was the people on the Thunder Prison Mountain, the spectators on the sidelines, or even the people from the 5 major academies in the sky, focused their attention on Yi Guchen. He had become the focus of everyone's attention at this moment. He felt that countless gazes were directed at him, as if they wanted to penetrate his body. Yi Guchen's lips curved into a faint smile. At this point, there was no need to hide anything. A terrifying wave of true qi, accompanied by a strong sword essence, burst out from Yi Guchen's body and swept in all directions, engulfing the sky. He no longer held back and truly released his own strength. I am the sword demon, Dugubai. Chapter 903. His cold voice was like a clap of thunder, exploding in all directions on the Thunder Prison Mountain. Everyone's mind was buzzing, as if they had been shocked silly. Yi Guchen looked at the sky disdainfully, his black hair fluttering in the wind. Vigorous true energy and sword intent exploded, forming a biting cold storm around him that swept in all directions. Sword Demon. It was a name that shocked everyone. In the Skywind Ridge, he had broken the sword techniques of many prodigies on the sword ranking, including Hua Wuxiu's sword technique. In the first round of the 5 Academies selection, he had defeated the top 3 on the sword ranking, Purple, Jian Jinghong, and Hua Wuxiu. 3 lights illuminated the world, illuminating the Sword Dynasty. The Sword Demon was like a peerless genius in the Sword Dao, rising in the Sword Dynasty. Many people were guessing who the Sword Demon was. But now, after Yi Guqin admitted his identity, they were all stunned. Everyone's mind was in a daze, unable to recover for a long time. They never thought that the Sword Demon would be the one with the lowest cultivation base among these prodigies. Qin Zhen, Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the others had already guessed Yi Guqin's identity. Now that they heard Yi Guqin admit it, they couldn't calm down. He really is. Qin Zhen took a deep breath, glad that he had made the right choice. I was still looking for the Sword Demon at the Skywind banquet, but I didn't recognize him. Zuoqiu Qing's voice was trembling. She remembered that she had wanted to compete with the Sword Demon at the Skywind banquet. Now that she thought about it, she had overestimated herself. Young Master Dugu, is this your true confidence? Han Lingxian was completely dazed, as if she had fallen into a dream. She finally understood why Yi Guqin always looked aloof in the Outcloud dynasty. Why did he not take Shen Mubai, Hua Tengfei, and the others seriously? Why would a lion care about ants at its feet? He's the Sword Demon? The corners of Purple Smoke Lord and Yellow Dragon Lord's eyes twitched. They knew that if that was really the case, they would no longer have the chance to take revenge. The eyes of the other lords and members of the aristocratic families were also filled with shock as they looked at the peerless figure on the Lightning Prison Mountain. At the same time, the people of the 5 great academies in the sky could not hide their shock. They had been paying attention to Sword Demon for a long time. After all, the Sword Demon had caused a huge commotion in the first stage. Suppressing the top 3 of the sword ranking was unprecedented in the Sword Dynasty. The 5 great academies all wanted to recruit such a peerless genius. However, no one expected that the Sword Demon was actually Yi Guqin. This Elder Hua Mo's expression was completely dumbstruck, and he was unable to speak for a long time. To think that he had just said that he didn't mind giving Yi Guqin to Sacred Cliff College because he didn't care. As a result, Elder Hua Mo's expression was extremely unsightly. Behind him, Hua Tengfei's expression was also extremely stunned. His eyes were filled with bone-deep coldness and hatred. It's really him. Hua Tengfei was so angry that his body was trembling. Ah! Bei Xian Elder looked up to the sky and laughed. Hua Mo actually personally pushed the monstrous Sword Demon to the Divine Cliff Academy. Sacred Cliff College had never received such a great bargain. On the other side, on the ship of Tianxian College, Mu Xingzu's delicate body couldn't help but tremble. She covered her mouth with both hands, and tears almost uncontrollably rolled down from her moist eyes. She really couldn't hold back her tears. Could it be, it's really? Mu Xingzu's heart trembled. This was because she also knew that Yi Guqin had once used the alias Dugubai. At this moment, Mu Xingzu didn't even dare to go forward to confirm. She was afraid that what she saw was just an illusion. She was afraid that the Dugubai was not the figure in her heart. Xingzhu, what's wrong? Ying Lang was shocked when she saw Mu Xingzu suddenly cry. Jiang Fengmian's eyes were deep. He glanced at Mu Xingzu, then looked at Yi Guqin on the Thunder Prison Mountain. What's going on? Jiang Fengmian was puzzled. What kind of existence was the Sword Demon, Dugubai, to be able to make Mu Xingzu lose her composure like this? On the Thunder Prison Mountain, all the prodigies fell into a momentary daze. This was because this news was simply too unbelievable. The Sword Demon? Hua Xingjie was extremely shocked. He never imagined that Yi Guqin was the Sword Demon who had broken Hua Wuxiu's sword technique and caused the 3 heavenly gates to tremble. Yushuang Yan could no longer maintain the indifference on her face. Although she previously thought that Yi Guqin was difficult to deal with, she did not think that he was the Sword Demon. What was even more unacceptable to her was that the person she despised and looked down on the most, Yi Guqin, was actually the person who had suppressed Hua Wuxiu. Hua Wuxiu was Yushuang Yan's target. This sudden turn of events caused Yu Shuangyan to feel dizzy. She could not accept it. He's the sword demon. He hid it really well. Yen Choku was shocked, and he could not help but laugh bitterly. He had met Yi Guchen before at the Heavenly Wind banquet. Unfortunately, Yi Guchen had not recovered his cultivation level at that time, so Yen Choku did not pay much attention to it. If that's the case, I'll have to ask the sword demon for advice in the future, Yen Choku thought to himself. You're really the sword demon? Yin Wufeng's face was tense, and the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. If he had known that Yi Guchen was the sword demon, he definitely would not have attacked him. So, do you still want to attack me? Yi Guchen stood with his hands behind his back, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. Even Hua Xingjie's face was extremely serious. Yi Guchen was the sword demon, and he had defeated Yin Wufeng previously. Now, even Hua Xingjie did not dare to underestimate Yi Guchen. Big Brother Dugu is so powerful. Kong Kong could not help but exclaim when he saw this. Yi Guchen's words silenced all the prodigies. They no longer had their previous arrogance. That's great. I also want to see how powerful the sword demon is, since he can counter Big Brother's sword technique, Hua Xingjie said in a serious tone. In front of so many people, if he were to shrink back, the Hua clan's face and his own face would be completely lost. Moreover, although Yi Guchen had shocked the 3 great heavenly gates, that was only a test. No one knew how strong he really was. Hua Xingjie could only pray in his heart that Yi Guchen's strength would not be too heaven-defying. Heavenly Sword of Supremacy. Hua Xingjie did not hesitate at all and attacked directly. Holding the long sword in his hand, the sword edge swallowed and spat out a sharp sword light, and it slashed towards Yi Guchen. Hua Xingjie has attacked. Exclamations rose and fell one after another. If Yi Guchen, the dark horse, was excluded, the recognized first place in this 5 Academy selection was undoubtedly Hua Xingjie, who was ranked 19th on the sword list. However, Yi Guchen had caused too much of a commotion in the first round. Even if it was just a test, he could suppress the top 3 on the sword list, which shocked everyone. All eyes were fixed on him. Everyone's eyes were fixed. They all wanted to know who this sword demon was, who was able to trigger 3 brilliant lights. What was his true strength? Chapter 904. Yi Guchen's eyes were indifferent when he saw Hua Xingjie attack. Even if Hua Xingjie had a cultivation at the peak of the 9th phase, as long as he didn't step into the divine dwelling stage, he wouldn't be a threat to him. Given Yi Guchen's current strength, he could even wrestle with someone of the divine dwelling stage, let alone someone at the peak of the 9th phase. Hua Xingjie's sword was like a heavenly sword as it slashed down at Yi Guchen. The wave of energy was extremely strong, and it was even fiercer and more intimidating than Yin Wufeng's. Seeing Hua Xingjie's imposing manner, all the spectators nodded inwardly. He was indeed worthy of being the strongest heaven pride in the Hua family, with the exception of Hua Wuxiu. One could tell how strong or weak he was as soon as he attacked. In the face of Hua Xingjie's sword attack, Yi Guchen took a step forward and held his sword horizontally to block. Ear-piercing clangs erupted as metal clashed, shaking the surroundings. Violent ripples of sword energy swept through the surroundings, shaking off the lightning tide. He blocked it. The gazes of countless spectators froze. Yi Guchen had easily blocked Hua Xingjie's sword attack. Hua Xingjie's eyes were also filled with extreme surprise. He knew that Yi Guchen's strength was extraordinary, but he didn't expect his sword attack to be so easily blocked. Yi Guchen's eyes were as sharp as a sword. Blood-colored sword qi gushed out, transforming into countless red spider lilies that pierced towards Hua Xingjie. God-slaying sword art, Permitha. When she saw the sword appear, Mu Xingzhu's delicate body trembled violently. Her eyes, which were already filled with tears, were filled with countless memories. She couldn't help but cry tears of joy. Xingzhu, what's wrong? Yinglang was even more surprised when she saw this. It was the first time she had seen Mu Xingzhu lose her composure. No, it's nothing. Xingzhu is just too happy. Mu Xingzhu choked up. Although she really wanted to reunite with Yi Guchen, the selection was not over yet. Mu Xingzu could only suppress the longing in her heart and follow the figure closely. Rumble. On the Thunder Prison Mountain, the battle continued. Their swords clashed, and the sound of collisions rang out incessantly. But he's only at stage 3, how can he be so strong? Hua Xingjie was puzzled. Naturally, he did not know that the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra that Yi Guqin cultivated was such a heaven-defying technique. Illusory sword technique. Hua Xingjie changed the direction of his sword and once again displayed one of the Hua family's emperor-level sword arts. His sword shadows alternated between real and illusory, transforming into a sword tide that swept toward Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin opened his palms and curled his fingers, turning the long sword in his hand. His left hand displayed the god-slaying sword technique, and countless blood-red sword rays surged out. His right hand displayed the immortal slaying sword technique, and the scene of a group of immortals falling appeared. Then Yi Guqin put his palms together, and the long sword burst out a trembling sound that shook the sky. God-slaying sword. Immortal slaying sword. Immortal God's cry. After breaking through to the heaven and earth spiritual bridge, Yi Guqin displayed the immortal God's cry again, and its power was obviously stronger than before. Moreover, the scene of immortal God's cry that appeared was more complicated, causing one's heart to tremble. With a sweep of the sword, heaven and earth mourned. The sword tide formed by Hua Xingjie was directly split into 2. The sword rays did not diminish, and roared toward Hua Xingjie. Komyo Kendo, Radiant Sword Realm. Seeing this, Hua Xingjie's expression changed abruptly. He no longer dared to hold back, and displayed his sword Dao. Although Komyo Kendo was an ordinary sword Dao, it was the peak of ordinary sword Dao, and its power was not inferior to that of an ordinary sword Dao. Moreover, if Komyo Kendo was combined with the dark sword Dao, its power could reach the peak of sword Dao, close to the creation sword Dao. Of course, Hua Xingjie was not like Hua Wuxiu, who had the sacred light and darkness physique and had 2 sword Daos. Even so, a single Komyo Kendo was not weak. At this moment, Hua Xingjie displayed Komyo Kendo's sword domain, the radiant sword realm. Endless light spread out from his body, as if forming a radiant boundary. The immortal god's cry slashed directly into the radiant sword realm, bursting forth with a violent collision. Within the radiant sword realm, golden light swords appeared one after another, counteracting the power of the immortal god's cry. However, even so, Hua Xingjie kept retreating, his chest trembling violently, and a bloody taste welled up in his throat. He was injured by the immortal god's cry. How could it be? Hua Xingjie gritted his teeth, and a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He had been looking for the sword demon previously, and had even said that if he appeared, he would immediately suppress and subdue him. However, now, facing Yi Guqin, Hua Xingjie felt so powerless. On the Tensei College ship, Hua Mo's expression froze when he saw this. Not only did Yi Guqin break Hua Wuxiu's sword move, but he also suppressed Hua Wuxiu in the Heavenly Gate, and now Hua Xingjie was injured. Wasn't Yi Guqin stepping on the pride of the Hua family to rise to the top? Thinking of this, Hua Mo's expression became gloomy. If this Duguobai knows what's good for him, then it's fine, but if he doesn't? Hua Mo muttered to himself. I don't believe it. I'm the genius of the Hua family, second only to my eldest brother Hua Wuxiu. I can't possibly lose. Hua Xingjie's aura burst out again, rising steadily. Radiant Sword Realm, 10,000 light illumination. In the golden radiant sword realm, 10,000 golden light swords instantly condensed, and each light sword was enough to easily penetrate an ordinary heaven and earth spirit bridge expert. At this moment, the 10,000 swords were like billions of rays of light, spreading toward Yi Guqin in an overwhelming manner. Yi Guqin's eyes became serious. At this moment his best countermeasure was the sword sect's secret technique, the 108,000 sword souls. However, this move was too conspicuous, and would easily cause people to suspect Yi Guqin's identity. Fortunately, other than this, Yi Guqin still had a countermeasure. Yi Guqin's sword momentum changed, and vigorous genuine qi burst out. A sword light as bright as the sun rose from the sword blade. Could that be? Outside the Thunder Prison Mountain, Han Lingxian covered her mouth with her jade-like hand, and her beautiful eyes couldn't help but widen. The move that Yi Guqin was about to use shocked her. 3 ultimate holy swords, absolute sword of Qianyang. Yi Guqin pointed his sword to the sky, and the sword light rose like the sun, releasing endless sword light waves. This move was the 3rd move of the 3 ultimate holy swords, absolute sword of Qianyang, absolute sword of Qianyang, absolute sword of Kuan-Yu, and absolute sword of broken stars. They represented the sun, moon, and stars respectively. This was the essence of the 3 ultimate holy swords. Absolute sword of Qianyang was undoubtedly the most overbearing move among the 3 moves. The sword light was vast and blazing like the sun, and it was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. Rumble! Yi Guqin swept out with his sword, and it was as if the sun had exploded. It set off a blazing wave, and it collided with Hua Xingjie's realm move. Boom! Intense light filled that part of the world. Everyone squinted their eyes to watch. In the endless light, the sound of someone vomiting blood could be heard. A figure flew out like a kite with a broken string, and he vomited a large mouthful of blood. His chest was charred black, and there were sword wounds all around him. The person who was sent flying was Hua Xingjie. Hua Xingjie has lost. At this moment, everyone around the Thunder Prison Mountain was silent. Hua Xingjie, who was ranked 19th on the sword leaderboard, had lost to the sword demon. Chapter 905. Looking at Hua Xingjie, who had been beaten back by Yi Guqin and was coughing up blood from the corner of his mouth. Everyone in the surrounding area fell silent. Hua Xingjie, ranked 19th on the sword ranking, was definitely not a nobody. It could be said that Hua Xingjie was almost qualified to challenge for the position of Sword Sun. However, such a heaven's pride, who was second only to Hua Wuxiu in the Hua family, had been defeated by Yi Guqin, who had appeared out of nowhere. This caused many people's hearts to beat wildly. It seems that another dark horse has appeared in the Sword Dynasty. This time, the competition for the position of Sword Sun will be interesting. Many people thought to themselves. The Sword Dynasty had gathered heaven's prides from all over the world, and there had been no lack of dark horses in the past. However, there were only a few heaven's prides like Yi Guqin, who had appeared out of nowhere and stunned everyone. Last time, the sword monk Xuanlian had appeared and defeated many heaven's prides in the top 10 of the sword ranking, which led to his 4th place. Could this sword demon Dugubai be another sword monk Xuanlian? Some people's eyes were filled with anticipation. No, I don't believe it. Dugubai, how could I lose to you? Hua Xingjie's eyes were bloodshot. This time, the 5 Academies selection should have been his time to shine. However, all of his glory had been taken away by Yi Guqin. 6th Sun Sword Technique. Hua Xingjie's aura of the 9th level of the Spirit Bridge of Heaven and Earth burst out completely. 6 vigorous and blazing golden sword lights soared up from the radiant sword realm, turning into 6 giant swords. Supported by the Emperor-level sword technique, Komyo Kendo's power fluctuated in all directions, causing the wind and clouds to change color. Hua Xingjie is really going all out in this attack. All the lords, people from the aristocratic families, and even those from the 5 academies were watching intently. Han Lingshuan's heart tightened. Although she had absolute confidence in Yi Guqin, the fluctuations of Hua Xingjie's sword were too intense. I don't believe that this move can't kill you. Yu Shuangyan's expression was cold. The enmity between her and Yi Guqin was already difficult to resolve, so at this moment, she naturally hoped that Yi Guqin would be defeated or even killed by Hua Xingjie. Yin Wufeng and the others were also watching. Sword Demon, show me what you're really capable of. Yen Choke's eyes were filled with anticipation. At this moment, everyone had different thoughts. On the other hand, Yi Guqin's eyes were as calm as a lake. The thick color of blood swallowed his eyes. The blood-red sword chi wrapped around the sword, and the sword edge vibrated and vibrated in the void. Azura Tribulation, Life Fall. Yi Guqin swung his sword, and a tragic sword intent of millions of corpses and rivers of blood spread out. In an instant, the sky and earth seemed to be dyed with a layer of blood. The Azura sword principle combined with the 10,000 god tribulation, life fall. The power of this move shocked everyone in the Sword Dynasty. What a terrifying murderous aura. The attack power of this move is shocking. What kind of heaven-defying sword technique is this? I have never seen it before. The crowd was in an uproar. After all, the Sword Dynasty and the Saint Origin Dynasty were far apart. Many people had only heard of Yi Guqin's name and deeds. Some of his moves were not known to everyone. Therefore, Yi Guqin did not have too many scruples. Other than some of the more eye-catching sword sex secret techniques, Yi Guqin could use the rest of his moves without worry. Boom! Yi Guqin's life fall collided with Hua Xingjie's 6 giant golden light swords. Rumble! One after another, the light swords were shattered by Yi Guqin's sword. The sword light that poured out overturned the ground and shattered countless rocks. Both sides were shaken and were forced to retreat. Hua Xingjie vomited blood again. A terrifying sword wound appeared on his chest, and blood dripped down. Obviously, he was severely injured. Yi Guqin was forced to retreat as well. He groaned in his chest, and a trail of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Hua Xingjie's strength was not weak. The 6 yang sword art had also injured Yi Guqin, causing some sword wounds to appear on his body. However, compared to Hua Xingjie, he was much better. He still lost. Looking at the battle that had been settled, many people were shocked. The people from the 5 great academies in the sky were also in an uproar. This sword demon is interesting. Jiang Fengmian played with a red maple leaf in his hand with a deep look in his eyes. He then looked at Mu Xingzu and realized that Mu Xingzu's gaze had never left Yi Guqin. This made Jiang Fengmian frown slightly. On the lightning prison mountain, Hua Xingjie kept coughing up blood. The surrounding lightning waves surged and surrounded him again, making his situation even worse. I lost. I can't believe I lost. Hua Xingjie was still in disbelief. This was like a nightmare to him. Everyone, let's attack together. If this person is here, will we still have a chance to perform? Yushuang Yan shouted coldly. She wanted to gather everyone's strength to deal with Yi Guqin. That's right. Everyone, let's attack together. If we don't get rid of this person, we are destined to be suppressed, Yin Wufeng said. Many prodigies turned to look at Yi Guqin with cold eyes. Yi Guqin's performance had seriously threatened them. Yi Guqin was also the one who had the highest chance of reaching the top. This has nothing to do with us, Gui Jianchou said. He was an itinerant cultivator, so he naturally wouldn't listen to Yin Wufeng and the others. Don't you think it's shameful to gang up on him? Yan Choku snorted. The winner is king, and the loser is a bandit, Hua Xingjie said. The true qi in his body surged as he used a secret technique to temporarily suppress his injuries. No matter what, they couldn't let Yi Guqin reach the top. Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, and Yushuang Yan led the way. Among the remaining prodigies, there were also a dozen or so prodigies from the aristocratic families who responded and gradually surrounded Yi Guqin. Shengguan Yan was also a prodigy from an aristocratic family, but she didn't get involved. She vaguely felt that the strength that Yi Guqin had shown was not all that he had. Do you think you can stop me? Yi Guqin's lips curled into a cold smile as he watched the prodigies gradually surround him. Do you need help? Yan Chokuku asked. Thank you, but there's no need for that. They're just a mob. Yi Guqin smiled casually. Everyone's faces froze when they heard Yi Guqin's words. The prodigies ranked 19th, 23rd, and 27th on the sword leaderboard, as well as a dozen or so other powerful prodigies from the aristocratic families. Yi Guqin actually regarded this force as a motley crew when they were put together. Everyone's expressions were very interesting. Hua Xingjie and the others' expressions were extremely dark. Attack! There was no hesitation. The conflict between Yi Guqin and Hua Xingjie and the other prodigies was irreconcilable. They had to fight to determine the victor. Heaven Fiend 9 Swords. 6 Sun Sword Technique. Heaven Ice River Sword. Hua Xingjie, Yushuang Yan, and the others all unleashed their most powerful sword techniques. The other prodigies also unleashed their techniques. A large number of sword techniques formed a destructive torrent that rushed toward Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin and his sword were like rainbows. His sword chi and sword intent were earth-shattering. He was fighting a group of prodigies alone. Dugu's 9 swords, sword-breaking technique. Yi Guqin's long sword slashed out, breaking all techniques with a single slash. A ray of sword light illuminated the sky, tearing apart the torrent of sword energy and breaking all the sword techniques. However, just as the shock in everyone's eyes had yet to fully emerge, the sword in Yi Guqin's hand was unable to withstand the violent collision. Under countless gazes, it exploded into metal shards with a loud crack. The endless destructive sword techniques drowned Yi Guqin's figure. Chapter 906. This, the sudden turn of events, was beyond everyone's expectations. Yi Guqin's sword was broken. A sword was extremely important to a sword cultivator. However, Yi Guqin's sword was purchased at the last minute, so it wasn't a divine weapon. In such a powerful collision, it was unable to withstand the shockwaves and directly shattered, turning into countless metal fragments. Young Master Dugu, Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the others turned pale with fright. Han Lingxian, in particular, was pale as a sheet, her body trembling. On the other hand, the Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord were pleasantly surprised. Yi Guqin's death was a pleasant surprise for them. In the sky, many exclamations came from the ships of the 5 academies. Yi Guqin's death was a great loss for the Sword Dynasty. Sword Demon's strength isn't bad, but unfortunately, he's too arrogant. Hua Mo shook his head. You still have the nerve to say that? It's all because Hua Xingjie and the others were shameless and attacked him together. You're saying that Sword Demon is arrogant and arrogant. Bei Xian Elder snorted. He should be dead now, right? Behind Hua Mo, Hua Tengfei stared fixedly at the center of the collision. His eyes were filled with delight. He and Yi Guqin had a grudge that was difficult to resolve. Mu Xingzhu's eyes were filled with worry. However, she still had confidence in Yi Guqin. In her heart, Yi Guqin was a godlike existence. He had survived the desperate situation of the Tianhuang Plain. What else was impossible? On the lightning prison mountain, the wind and clouds changed. Sword light illuminated the sky and thunder rumbled. Yi Guqin's figure was completely submerged in the destructive sword light. Is he dead? Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, Yushuang Yan, and the other Sky Prides were panting as they focused their gazes. More than 10 Sky Prides attacked together. Even the top 10 Sky Prides on the sword ranking couldn't ignore them. Although Yi Guqin had shown great strength before, it was still a little difficult to say that he was in the top 10 of the sword ranking. Just as everyone was holding their breaths, the destructive and terrifying sword tide finally dispersed. Boundless golden light suddenly surged out from within the dust and smoke, and everyone could faintly see a lofty figure standing there like an indestructible god. All the spectators' hearts tightened, and they almost stopped breathing. As the dust dissipated, the figure finally appeared. Yi Guqin's body suddenly grew to 9 feet. 2 star marks flashed between his eyebrows, and endless ancient divine light patterns flowed all over his body. Yi Guqin transformed into a 2-star ancient god. Not only that, but a golden armor formed by ancient god power appeared on the surface of his body. The surface of the armor was branded with countless totem patterns. It gave off a sense of desolation, vastness, and firmness. The golden armor wasn't a real weapon. It was a defensive technique of the ancient god clan, the immovable ancient god king armor. The Heaven Barbarian King had also used this technique during the battle with the chaotic world demonic ape. Although the immovable ancient god king armor wasn't a real defensive tool, its defensive power was greater than that of a supreme-grade defensive armor with mystical patterns. Yi Guqin estimated that with his abilities as a 2-star ancient god, the defensive power of the ancient god immovable king armor was equivalent to that of a quasi-apocalypse divine weapon. Yi Guqin's powerful physical body, coupled with the ancient god immovable king armor, could be said to be able to withstand a blow from a divine dwelling realm expert. Although Hua Xingjie and the others' joint attack was powerful, it was undoubtedly wishful thinking to kill Yi Guqin in his ancient god form. This is impossible. Hua Xingjie and the others widened their eyes. They couldn't hide the shock in their hearts. Yi Guchen had only suffered some injuries, which were far from fatal. How could this be? What kind of technique did Duguwubai use? Countless gasps could be heard from all directions. The 100 clans of the various heavens were ancient secrets that few people knew about. The people from the 5 academies in the sky were also in a daze. Yi Guchen's strength was beyond their expectations. He had withstood the attacks of a group of supreme talents by himself. No, I don't believe it. Continue to attack. Hua Xingjia's voice trembled slightly. At the beginning of the 5 academies selection, he was so high-spirited that he even wanted to suppress the sword demon. But now, there was a trace of panic in his eyes. Yin Wufeng's expression changed completely. As for Yu Shuangyan, all of her coldness and arrogance had disappeared. This famous iceberg beauty was now trembling like a quail, her jade-like face incomparably pale. You don't even know who you're facing. Yi Guchen's voice was indifferent. He was like a god of war, his golden light shining in all directions. His words silenced all the heaven prides. While Hua Xingjie and the others were waiting, Yi Guchen's figure suddenly turned into a beam of golden light and sped towards the peak. Is he going to attack the peak? Yi Guchen's action shocked everyone. The peak of the lightning prison mountain was not a place that anyone could reach. But Yi Guchen dared to do so. He stretched out his hand, and his ancient god power surged. It transformed into a golden seal that ruthlessly bombarded the lightning curtain. At the same time, the 4 lightning spirits of the divine dwelling stage also reacted and rushed towards Yi Guchen. Oh, you're courting death. Hua Xingjie and the others breathed a sigh of relief. They thought Yi Guchen would take revenge on them, but they didn't expect Yi Guchen to court death. Who could stop 4 lightning spirits of the divine dwelling stage? Duguwubai is too careless. Bei Xian Elder's face was filled with worry. He had long regarded Yi Guchen as a student of Sacred Cliff College. Yi Guchen's face was calm in the face of the 4 lightning spirits. To others, Yi Guchen's action was crazy, ignorant, and overestimating himself. But only Yi Guchen knew that he had the confidence to do so. Break! Yi Guchen let out an angry roar, and the ancient divine royal seal directly broke through the lightning screen. Yi Guchen flashed away. In an instant, endless lightning frantically rushed towards Yi Guchen. The Thunder Prison Mountain Peak attracted lightning from the sky all year round, so the power of the lightning could be imagined. The lightning seemed to have turned into an electric net, wrapping around Yi Guchen. Lightning also burst out from the surface of the golden ancient god immovable king armor. If it were Hua Xingjie and the others, they wouldn't be able to withstand such terrifying lightning. Yi Guchen was confident not only because of the ancient god body and the immovable king armor. It was also because he had the devouring power. Yi Guchen activated the devouring power in his body, turning it into a devouring black hole, absorbing and refining the lightning power that poured into his body. The overbearing devouring power wasn't the slightest bit weaker than the lightning power. Not only that, the Thunder Tribulation Sword that had been silent in the depths of Yi Guchen's body began to tremble again. The trembling of the Thunder Tribulation Sword even caused the God Devourer Demon Sword to tremble slightly, as if it felt threatened. More lightning was sucked into the Thunder Tribulation Sword. Yi Guchen's pressure was greatly reduced. His figure flashed, and he directly rushed to the peak. A sword, inserted diagonally into the peak, attracted the lightning of heaven and earth, and its power was earth-shattering. What is Duguwubai trying to do? Is he trying to pull out the 9-dragon thunder prison? Seeing Yi Guchen's action, everyone's face froze. A horrified expression appeared on everyone's face. Chapter 907. The 9-dragon thunder prison was once a divine weapon, so its power was self-evident. Even if it was damaged and had fallen to a quasi-divine weapon, it was still very powerful. But the 9-dragon thunder prison was not something that anyone could pull out. Even Hua Wuxiu, who was ranked 3rd on the sword ranking, had tried to pull out the 9-dragon thunder prison but failed. Because this sword not only controlled lightning, but also merged with the soul of the 9-headed dragon, making it extremely domineering. In the past 5 academy selection, There was no lack of people who wanted to obtain the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, but without exception, many people could not even break the light curtain. At this moment, everyone was shocked to see Yiguchen break the lightning light curtain and rush towards the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Could Yiguchen succeed? Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, Qin Zhen, Purple Smoke Lord, Yellow Dragon Lord and others. There were also Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, Yushuang Yen and others, including Hua Mo, Hua Tingfei, Bei Shen Elder, Kong Kong, Mu Xingzu and Yingling. Everyone held their breaths at this moment, staring intently at the peak of the Thunder Prison Mountain. Would Yiguchen create a miracle today? Looking at the sword submerged in endless heavenly lightning, Yiguchen's eyes were full of arrogance and ambition. So what if it was a quasi-divine weapon? Yiguchen had a real immemorial demon sword in his body. The one who felt lucky now was not Yiguchen, but the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. It was the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison's honor to be used by Yiguchen. Behind him, the 4 divine dwelling stage lightning spirits chased after him. Yiguchen's only choice now was to pull out the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Only then could he solve the crisis of the 4 lightning spirits. He used so near, yet worlds apart to get close to the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison. Only then did he see the sword clearly. The Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison was 5 feet long, and the sword hilt was like a 9-headed dragon coiling around. Because the sword attracted lightning all year round, it was covered with countless natural lightning patterns. There were even 9 flood dragon patterns vaguely visible, emitting a dragon's might. Flood dragon demonic souls were rare enough. The true dragon was almost extinct. Just as Yiguchen approached the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, the Nine-Dragon Lightning Prison's sword suddenly trembled. Soon after, everyone heard 9 ear-piercing roars in succession. 9 Jiao Dragon demonic souls appeared. Each of the Jiao Dragons was covered in blazing lightning. They looked like 9 thick lightning bolts. After 9 consecutive roars, the soul of the 9-headed Thunder Flood Dragon charged towards Yiguchen. Yiguchen had a strange look in his eyes. No wonder it was once a divine weapon of heavenly tribulation. The Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison was actually able to manifest the souls of the 9-headed Thunder Flood Dragons to attack the enemy. However, Yiguchen showed no fear and continued to charge forward. Boom! There was a violent collision. Yiguchen activated the ancient god body with all his might, and the golden seal suppressed it. Not only that, the Thunder Calamity Sword and devouring power in his body were also refining the lightning power. Yiguchen took this opportunity to break through the defense of the 9-headed Thunder Flood Dragon soul and landed on the sword itself. Yiguchen held the hilt of the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison sword with one hand. At this moment, Yiguchen was the center of attention. Everyone held their breaths as they waited. It's impossible for him to pull it out. Even Big Brother can't do it. Hua Xingjie's forehead was covered in sweat unknowingly. The Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison is extremely difficult to subdue. Moreover, there will be a backlash. Yushuang Yen prayed in her heart. Countless gazes were focused on Yiguchen. Yiguchen, on the other hand, was completely focused. He placed his hand on the sword hilt. An even more terrifying lightning power, accompanied by sword intent, rushed into his body. The power of lightning was 7-colored. It was extremely mysterious and powerful. Lightning sword principle and unusual lightning. Yiguchen's eyes narrowed. In the Nine-Dragon Thunder Prison, there was indeed the comprehension of the lightning sword principle that the lightning sword reverend had left behind. Not only that, but there was also a type of unusual lightning in the sword. 7-colored dark lightning. It is said to be a lightning formed by 7 different types of unusual lightning. It even has the power to punish on behalf of the heavens. Yiguchen was shocked and revealed a joyful expression. 7-colored dark lightning was one of the most powerful types of lightning among the unusual lightning. Even Yiguchen's purple void lightning, which was a combination of 2 types of unusual lightning, was not comparable to the 7-colored dark lightning. Yiguchen's body was instantly submerged in the 7-colored dark lightning. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple. 7-colored thunderbolts wrapped around Yiguchen's body, bringing with them a powerful destructive force. 7-colored dark lightning. Can Duguwubai withstand it? Everyone's eyes were fixed on it. Han Lingxuan's palms were sweating. She was very nervous for Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen's body was being baptized by the destructive power of the lightning. Even the immovable ancient god king armor on Yi Guchen's body showed signs of cracking. From this, one could see how powerful the backlash of the 9-dragon thunder prison was. But no one could imagine how many trump cards Yi Guchen had. The thunder tribulation sword in his body was constantly absorbing the power of the 7-colored dark lightning and heavenly lightning. Vaguely, there seemed to be words emerging on the sword. Could it be the 4th move of the 1,000-god tribulation? Yi Guchen was shocked. This was a pleasant surprise. But to fully manifest the 4th move, it was obvious that the current power was not enough. But the most important thing was that Yi Guchen's true qi, after being tempered by endless lightning, was about to reach the 4th stage. At this time, the 4 divine dwelling stage thunder spirits were less than 3 feet away from Yi Guchen. In the next second, Yi Guchen's body would be torn apart by the 4 thunder spirits. Duguwubai, you can't defy the heavens. Hua Xingjie's eyes were bloodshot, as if he couldn't wait to see Yi Guchen fall. It's over. Yushuang Yan's beautiful eyes also showed a trace of relief. This result couldn't be better for them. Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai and the others almost stopped breathing. In the sky, Sacred Cliff College's Bei Xian elder's face was solemn. He really wanted to help. But during the 5 academy selection, no one was allowed to intervene, so he was powerless. Just when everyone thought that the peerless genius of the Sword Dynasty was going to die at the hands of the Thunder Spirit, a voice suddenly sounded. Yi Guchen himself didn't have the slightest bit of fear. He had experienced countless life and death situations, so this little crisis was nothing. Sword rise. Yi Guchen's black hair fluttered in the wind as he roared to the sky. The roar shook the heavens for 30,000 miles. If he couldn't even subdue a sword, how could Yi Guchen be called a sword master? How could he be called a sword demon? Boom! True qi erupted from Yi Guchen's body, and the ancient god power surged. At the same time, the thunder tribulation sword absorbed the power of thousands of thunderbolts. The god devourer sword trembled slightly, releasing a trace of the ancient demon sword's power, which was transmitted to the 9-dragon thunder prison. The 9-dragon thunder prison sword trembled in an instant, as if a dragon was facing an ancient true dragon. Not to mention that the 9-dragon thunder prison was in a damaged state. Even if it was at its peak, it couldn't resist the pressure of the god devourer sword. The ancient famed sword came out, and all other swords submitted. Finally, endless thunder and lightning exploded from the 9-dragon thunder prison sword. Under the gaze of thousands of people, Yi Guchen held the sword hilt and suddenly exerted force. The sword was pulled out inch by inch. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, then, a sword cry that shook everyone's eardrums resounded between heaven and earth. Boom! The 9-dragon thunder prison was completely pulled out by Yi Guchen. The sword demon pulled out the sword, and the lightning tribulation shook the world and illuminated the sky. Chapter 908. Between heaven and earth, all sounds seemed to have disappeared. Only the sound of the 9-dragon thunder prison resounded throughout the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The 9-dragon thunder prison, which had been at the peak of the thunder prison mountain for a long time, was completely pulled out by Yi Guchen at this moment. Yi Guchen's long hair danced in the wind, his temperament was wild and disdainful. Even in his eyes, there was thunder and lightning shooting out. When the sword demon pulled out his sword, the lightning tribulation shook the world and illuminated the sky. After the 3 lights illuminated the world, Yi Guchen pulled out the 9-dragon thunder prison again, shocking everyone present. How is this possible? Hua Xingjie knelt on the ground with a thud, his eyes were lifeless. As the pride of the Hua family, other than Hua Wuxiu, he did not put any other pride in his eyes. He was proud. But this pride was shattered in front of Yi Guchen. So what if he was from the Hua family? So what if he was ranked 19th on the sword leaderboard? In front of Yi Guchen, he was still vulnerable. Yushuang Yan's mind was also buzzing and trembling. The blood on her face faded, leaving behind a sheet of paper. Only now did she realize that the arrogance and coldness she had towards Yi Guchen before was laughable. Outside the Thunder Prison Mountain, many lords and aristocratic families who were watching the battle were completely speechless. It seems that I still underestimated young Master Dugu. Han Lingxian smiled bitterly. She remembered that when she first participated in the selection, Yi Guchen once said that he wanted to win the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Han Lingxian thought it was a joke. But now, the joke was real. For some reason, Han Lingxian was not too happy. The more outstanding Yi Guchen's performance was, the greater the gap between him and Han Lingxian. In the end, Han Lingxian could only silently look at Yi Guchen's back. In the sky, Bei Xian Elder's face was flushed with excitement. Yi Guchen's performance was really beyond his expectations. Hua Mo was speechless. His face froze. Hua Tingfei's eyes were filled with unprecedented shock. Who would have thought that the young man who had pulled out the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison with a shocking sword might was the Duguwubai who had been treated as a cripple in the Chuyun dynasty without any qi cultivation? Mu Xingzu was not surprised by Yi Guchen's performance. She shed tears of joy. Jiang Fengmian and Yinglang were shocked. Different people looked at Yi Guchen with different gazes, but there was no doubt that they were all shocked. At this moment, Yi Guchen pulled out the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. 7-colored profound lightning illuminated the sky. He was like the master of the sword, the king of thunder. The moment the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison was pulled out, the 4 divine dwelling stage lightning spirits exploded into balls of lightning and poured into Yi Guchen and the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. To a certain extent, these lightning spirits were the guardians of the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Since Yi Guchen had pulled out the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, there was no need for them to exist. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions sounded one after another on the Thunder Prison Mountain. Lightning spirits exploded one after another, turning into bolts of lightning and gathering at the top of the mountain. Half of the lightning was absorbed by the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. The other half poured into Yi Guchen's body. Yi Guchen's aura soared again. Under the envious gazes of many heaven prides, Yi Guchen directly broke through to the 4th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Boom! In Yi Guchen's Qi Si, another section of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge was formed. Yi Guchen had officially stepped into the 4th level, and his aura was even more powerful. He looked disdainfully at the pale-faced Hua Xingjie and the others, and the corners of his lips curved in an icy smile. Seeing Yi Guchen's sneer, Hua Xingjie and the others felt as if their hearts had fallen into an ice cave. You have to pay the price for doing something wrong, right? Yi Guchen's tone was cold. Although it was impossible for him to kill Hua Xingjie and the others in front of everyone. But it was still possible to teach them an unforgettable lesson. Duguwubai, how dare you? Hua Xingjie shouted, but he could not hide the trembling and panic in his voice. Everyone knew that Hua Xingjie was tough on the outside but weak on the inside. Yi Guchen did not hesitate and directly attacked. He also wanted to experience the power of a quasi-tribulation divine weapon. Previously in the Tianhuang Plains, Yi Guchen had seen Gu Shaoyang's quasi-tribulation divine weapon, the 7-star illusionary god, and its power had left a deep impression on him. Now that Yi Guchen also had a quasi-tribulation divine weapon, he naturally needed someone to practice on. Yi Guchen held the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison in his hand and swept out with his sword. He did not use any moves, but the sword itself surged with a large amount of lightning. The moment I pulled out the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, I completely controlled this sword, but I haven't refined the 7-colored profound thunder in it, Yi Guchen thought to himself. Although he controlled the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, he had not comprehended the 7-colored profound thunder and the thunder sword will in it. But now was not the time to refine it. The sword radiance spread out along with streaks of lightning. The sound of thunder rumbled and shook the sky. Who could resist the wind and thunder of the sword? Hua Xingjie and the others blocked with their swords, but they did not have the slightest strength to resist. They were beaten back and spat out red blood. Even the supreme-grade divine weapons in their hands could not withstand the ferocious power of the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yi Guchen suppressed Hua Xingjie and more than 10 other geniuses of the aristocratic families. In the sky, Hua Mo's face was extremely gloomy. Hua Xingjie had not only embarrassed himself, but also the Hua family. Just as Hua Mo was about to speak, Bei Xian Elder said with a fake smile, "Elder Hua Mo, you said that no one can interfere with the 5 academies selection." Hearing this, Elder Hua Mo's face froze and his eyes darkened. This time, the Hua family had lost all face. Boom! Yi Guqin attacked with his sword. Every sword radiance was accompanied by blazing lightning. A quasi-tribulation divine weapon is indeed powerful. I haven't used any moves, but my ordinary attacks are comparable to the power of a king-level sword art. Yi Guqin was also slightly shocked. Even a quasi-tribulation divine weapon had such power. What about a real tribulation divine weapon? How powerful would the demon sword devour gods be? At this moment, Yi Guqin suddenly looked forward to the day when he could completely control the demon sword devour gods. Yi Guqin swung his sword and a series of lightning radiance spread out, directly injuring Hua Xingjie. His body was charred black and even emitted a burnt smell. Yushuang Yan in Wufeng and the others were also very miserable. The rest of the geniuses, such as Gui Jianqiu and Yan Chok, were not affected. They looked at the miserable Hua Xingjie and the others, and the corners of their eyes twitched slightly. If they were in Yi Guqin's position, they would not be able to resist his attack. Last move. Yi Guqin pointed his sword to the sky and poured all the genuine qi of the 4th stage spiritual bridge of heaven and earth into the 9-dragon thunder prison. A huge lightning bolt streaked across the sky. Yi Guqin's sword resonated with the heavenly thunder. This was the unique property of the 9-dragon thunder prison. Thunder Dragon Purgatory. Yi Guqin swung his sword, accompanied by the roar of a dragon. A thunder dragon emerged from the 9-dragon thunder prison, bursting with thunderbolts. Endless lightning radiance seemed to form a lightning cage, enveloping Hua Xingjie and the others. This was one of the abilities of the 9-dragon thunder prison. It formed a 9-headed lightning dragon and formed a purgatory to attack and imprison the enemy. This was how the name of the 9-dragon thunder prison came about. Yi Guqin had only just begun to control the 9-dragon thunder prison and could not fully manifest the 9-dragon purgatory. But even if there was only one lightning dragon, its power was extremely strong. The lightning dragon circled and turned into a purgatory, imprisoning Hua Xingjie, Yushuang Yan, In Wufeng, and the others, and bombarding them with lightning. They spat out blood, and their bodies were charred black. No one could resist the power of the 9-dragon thunder prison. After a round of bombardment, Yi Guqin withdrew the lightning dragon soul. Looking around, only a charred ground was left. There were also charred bodies lying on the ground, on the verge of death. Gulp! The whole place was dead silent. Only the sound of gulping could be heard from time to time. Chapter 909. At this moment, Hua Xingjie, In Wufeng, Yushuang Yan and the others were really miserable. Their bodies were burnt black, and it was almost impossible to tell who was who. Their auras were extremely weak, and they were on the verge of death. Although Yi Guqin could not directly kill them, he did not hold back and beat these people until they were on the verge of death. Even if they did not die, they were almost half dead. "Brother Dugu is mighty," Kong Kong shouted, looking like an onlooker. The eyes of the rogue prodigies twitched. Hua Xingjie and the others were probably the most miserable existence in the 5 academies selection. Many people's eyes turned to Yi Guqin again, with shock and fear in their eyes. A prodigy not only had extraordinary talent and strength, but also had such a resolute and cold temperament. It was impossible for Yi Guqin not to be famous in the Sword Dynasty. In the sky, the corner of Elder Hua Mo's eyes twitched slightly. However, he could not make things difficult for Yi Guqin. After all, Yi Guqin did not kill them. As Yi Guqin pulled out the 9-dragon thunder prison, the thunder tide on the entire thunder prison mountain also disappeared. This famous trial place had completely lost its effect. The shock in many people's hearts had not disappeared. After all, the 9-dragon thunder prison was something that even Hua Wuxiu could not pull out. Was Yi Guqin stronger than Hua Wuxiu? Many people's eyes were filled with surprise. If that was the case, it was a big blow to the reputation of the Hua family. Some people looked up at the Tensei College's ship in the sky. Elder Hua Mo was expressionless and said loudly, "The 5 Academies selection is over." As the word "over" fell, many people's hearts relaxed. However, more people were still unable to calm down. Obviously, there was a dark horse in the selection of the 5 Academies. He triggered 3 brilliant lights and suppressed the top 3 of the sword ranking. He pulled out the 9-dragon thunder prison and defeated all the geniuses. Yi Guchen, without a doubt, was the first in this 5 Academies selection. He would also be the absolute genius that the 5 Academies would strive to compete for. Who is this Dugubai? Who knows, there are always a few geniuses in the Sword Dynasty from time to time, but geniuses like Dugubai are really rare. As the selection came to an end, there were a lot of discussions around them. Next, it was time to choose the academy. Many people were curious about which academy Yi Guchen would join. However, the next scene, the next moment, the world, once again, the world, once again, the world, and everyone. On Goddess Academy's ship, a beautiful figure flashed towards Yi Guchen like a fairy. When Yi Guchen saw who it was, a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. Previously, his attention was focused on the 9-dragon thunder prison, so he did not pay attention to the people from the 5 great academies in the sky. Therefore, he did not know that Mu Xingzu was among them. At this moment, the selection was over. Mu Xingzu could no longer hold back the overflowing longing in her heart and rushed towards Yi Guchen. Under the gaze of thousands of people, Mu Xingzu, like a swallow returning to its nest, fiercely threw herself into Yi Guchen's arms. "Master!" Mu Xingzu's voice was trembling with sobs. Only the heavens knew how much despair Mu Xingzu had felt after hearing about the Tianhuang Plains. Yi Guchen was her only salvation. If not for Yi Guchen, she would still be the unknown girl who was bullied by Qin Lin in the outer courtyard of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest. It was Yi Guchen who changed Mu Xingzu's fate. Xingzhu. After going through so much, Yi Guchen also sighed in his heart when he saw the familiar figure that he had not seen for a long time. He raised his hand and patted Mu Xingzu's little head. This scene caused the surrounding crowd to stare with their eyes and mouths wide open. Isn't that the proud daughter of Tianxian College, Mu Xingzu? She actually called Dugubai master? Could her mysterious master be Dugubai? Is it really master? Many people were shocked and tongue-tied, but there were also people who were puzzled. Was Dugubai really just Mu Xingzu's master? Mu Xingzu's attachment and intimate attitude made it difficult for people not to think about him. Mu Xingzu is actually young Master Dugu's disciple? Han Lingxian was dazed. At this moment, she finally understood why Yi Guchen's expression changed when he saw Mu Xingzu's name. "My heart is broken." Some young prodigies also heard the sound of their hearts breaking. Mu Xingzu was a proud daughter whose beauty and strength were on par with each other. In addition, she was beautiful and pure. In the Sword Dynasty, she had many followers. TSK, I wonder what Jiang Fengyan and Shangguan Jingshan will think when they see this scene? Many people couldn't help but look at Jiang Fengyan on the ship. Among Mu Xingzu's suitors, there were only 2 people who were thought to have the best chance. One was the 5th on the sword ranking, Jiang Fengyan, a peerless heaven pride of the Jiang clan. He was a modest young master. The other person was the 7th on the sword ranking, Shangguan Jingshan of the Shangguan clan. He was also a top divine dwelling stage heaven pride whose name resounded throughout the Sword Dynasty. Jiang Fengyan's eyes were deep, and there was a strange look in his eyes. He had pursued Mu Xingzu for a long time, but Mu Xingzu had never spoken to him. Not to mention physical contact, they didn't even speak much. But at this moment, Mu Xingzu threw herself into the arms of a young man in public without any scruples and sobbed. If Yi Guchen was an old man in his 70s or 80s, no one would think much of it. But Yi Guchen was only a few years older than Mu Xingzu. At this moment, he looked more like a couple who had been separated for a long time. It was no wonder that people would think much of it. That Dugubai is Xingzhu's master? How is that possible? Yinglong's beautiful eyes widened in shock. She glanced at Jiang Fengyan from the corner of her eye. Jiang Fengmian narrowed his eyes slightly, his face expressionless. If it was anyone else, seeing the woman they liked fall into someone else's arms, they would feel uncomfortable in their heart. Xingzhu rejected the dean's offer to take her in as a disciple for Dugubai. She's really… Yinglang was completely speechless. She had thought that Mu Xingzhu's master would be a peerless expert, or at least a top venerable stage existence. But who would have thought that he was only a fourth-level spirit bridge of heaven and earth? Even if Dugubai was talented and powerful, in Yinglang's eyes, he couldn't compare to a single finger of the dean of Tianxian College. Tis once the dean knows about this, he'll most likely make trouble for Dugubai, Yinglang thought to herself. When Shangguan Yen saw this scene, she was also slightly stunned. Mu Xingzhu's master is actually Dugubai. If my cousin finds out, he'll probably fight with Dugubai, Shangguan Yen muttered to herself. The cousin she was talking about was naturally Shangguan Jingshan, who was ranked 7th on the sword leaderboard. He was different from Jiang Fengmian's humble and low-key personality. Shangguan Jingshan's personality was just like his name. He was extremely arrogant and domineering. Shangguan Yen knew that with Shangguan Jingshan's personality, if he found out about this, he definitely wouldn't let Yi Guqin off. Mu Xingzhu blushed slightly when she sensed the strange and astonished gazes around her. She really missed him too much, so she didn't have any scruples. Did Xingzhu cause trouble for Master? Mu Xingzhu asked embarrassedly with tears in her starry eyes. She naturally could not address Yi Guqin as senior brother Yi in front of so many people. Xingzhu, you've also become so outstanding. Yi Guqin patted Mu Xingzhu's head. In his eyes, there was only the appreciation of a senior looking at a junior. Mu Xingzhu lowered her head shyly. She would only return to her original personality in front of Yi Guqin. At this moment, a faint voice sounded. Hehe, it's better to see than to hear. I didn't expect Miss Mu's rumored mysterious master to be you, sword demon Dugubai. When Yi Guqin heard this, he revealed a strange expression and glanced over. A blue-haired, cultured and elegant young man walked through the air with a smile that seemed to contain a deep meaning at the corner of his mouth. Ranked 5th on the sword leaderboard, Jiang Fengmian. Yi Guqin's eyes were deep. Everyone looked over. Was the Azura arena going to unfold next? Chapter 9-10. Jiang Fengmian was famous in the Sword Dynasty. He was a peerless genius ranked 5th on the sword leaderboard, a divine palace genius. His background, strength, and appearance were all perfect. Such a person was naturally sought after by tens of thousands of people. He was the dream lover of many young girls in the Sword Dynasty. And Jiang Fengmian's personality was very single-minded. He had always pursued Mu Xingzhu, even though there was no result. At this moment, Jiang Fengmian finally couldn't hold himself back and walked out to ask, Jiang Fengmian, what is the meaning of this? Mu Xingzhu's beautiful face darkened slightly. Although her attitude towards Jiang Fengmian couldn't be said to be very good, she didn't dislike him either. At least compared to the pestering Shangguan Jingshan, Jiang Fengmian was a modest gentleman. He would never do anything that crossed the line. But as long as the matter concerned Yi Guqin, Mu Xingzhu would become very sensitive. If Jiang Fengmian targeted Yi Guqin, Mu Xingzhu would never allow it. Can't I just say hello? Jiang Fengmian spread his hands. Mu Xingzhu was too protective of Yi Guqin. 5th on the sword leaderboard, Jiang Fengmian. This one has long heard of your name, Yi Guqin said indifferently. How can he compare to Brother Dugu? He's not famous, but when he does, he amazes the world. As expected of Miss Mu's master. It's just that, I'm very curious. How did Brother Dugu teach Miss Mu? To think that she would reject the dean's request to take her in as a disciple. Jiang Fengmian's eyes narrowed slightly as he played with a maple leaf in his hand. Yi Guqin didn't expect that Mu Xingzhu would reject the offer of Tianxian College's dean because of her. Mu Xingzhu, will only ever have one master, Jiang Fengmian. Why are you saying all this? Mu Xingzhu increasingly disliked Jiang Fengmian's tone. It's nothing. I was just curious and wanted to ask Brother Dugu for advice. As Jiang Fengmian spoke, maple leaves began to fall from the sky. The maple was red like fire, but it carried a chilling sword-intent aura. Jiang Fengmian stood tall amidst the dancing red maples. His long blue hair fluttered in the wind, making him look otherworldly. The people and scenery blended together, creating an extremely beautiful scene. However, it also carried a murderous aura of autumn. Is Jiang Fengmian going to attack Duguobai? Cries of surprise rang out one after another from the surroundings. There was absolutely no doubt about Jiang Fengmian's strength. He could easily wipe out Hua Shengjie and the other heaven prides by himself. After all, the heaven prides of the divine dwelling stage were considered top existences in the South Horizon region. Not to mention that in the Sword Dynasty, only the top 10 heaven prides on the sword list were existences of the divine dwelling stage. Divine dwelling stage. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows, but there wasn't the slightest fear on his face. With his current strength, he no longer needed to fear the divine dwelling stage. Not to mention that he had also obtained the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, which had caused Yi Guchen's combat strength to soar once again. In the past, he had to risk his life in a battle against Gu Xiaoyang, who was of the divine dwelling stage. But now, Yi Guchen had stepped into the 4th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. For him, the divine dwelling stage was only a slightly stronger opponent. Stop, Jiang Fengmian, don't be presumptuous in front of Master. Mu Xingzu stood in front of Yi Guchen. Although she had instinctive confidence in Yi Guchen, no matter what, the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge was bound to be at a disadvantage against someone of the divine dwelling stage. Enough, Jiang Fengmian, there is still the matter of the Academy's enrollment. Don't interrupt, Bei Xian Elder said. Seeing that Mu Xingzu and Bei Xian Elder had spoken, Jiang Fengmian revealed a faint smile. Fine, I was rude. But in the future, I will certainly ask Brother Dugu for advice. Everyone revealed a strange expression. It seemed that because of Mu Xingzu, Jiang Fengmian was going to clash with Yi Guchen. I will definitely accompany you to the end. Yi Guchen smiled. He came to the Sword Dynasty to gain experience, so he would naturally accept all challenges. Who do you think will win between Duguobai and Jiang Fengmian? Of course it will be young Master Jiang. Although Duguobai is not weak, he only has the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. Many people present began to discuss. But the majority of people were still optimistic about Jiang Fengmian. After all, Jiang Fengmian had been famous for a long time and was a divine dwelling heaven pride. In contrast, although Yi Guchen was amazing, his achievements were limited. He could easily defeat Hua Shengjie and a group of heaven prides, including the top 10 heaven prides on the sword ranking. Okay, the 5 academies selection is over. Next is the time to choose the academy. Our Tensei College is the head of the 5 great academies. We have abundant resources and countless experts. I believe that everyone will make a wise choice. In the sky, Elder Hua Mo took a step forward and spoke in a clear voice. The 5 great academies of the Sword Dynasty were Tensei College, Sun Moon College, Long River College, Tianxian College, and Sacred Cliff College. Tensei College was indeed the head of the 5 great academies. In the past 5 academies competition, Tensei College had also dominated. Hua Mo's words were more for Yi Guchen to hear. In his opinion, with Yi Guchen's talent, his best choice was naturally to join Tensei College. As soon as Elder Hua Mo finished speaking, many heaven prides who passed the selection immediately joined Tensei College. Kong Kong, Han Lingxian, and the others all looked at Yi Guchen. Yen Chou seemed to be waiting for Yi Guchen's decision. Yi Guchen pondered for a moment. When Hua Mo saw this, he frowned slightly. This was different from what he had expected. Yi Guchen should have chosen Tensei College without any hesitation. Thinking of this, Hua Mo couldn't help but say, Duguobai, your talent and strength are indeed good. If you join Tensei College, your strength will definitely improve. Although Hua Mo was a little unhappy that Yi Guchen had stepped on Hua Wuxiu and Hua Xingjie to get to the top, Yi Guchen's talent was still outstanding. However, Yi Guchen's talent was there after all. Hua Mo could not give up recruiting Yi Guchen because of this. Tisk, he's indeed the sword devil. The elders of the academy actually took the initiative to recruit him. Some of the surrounding heaven prides looked on enviously. What are you talking about, Huaimo? Who was the one who said that he would never accept a level 3 heaven and earth bridge disciple and give him to Sacred Cliff College? Are you going back on your words? Bei Xian Elder was so angry that he blew his beard and glared at Huaimo. Huaimo said calmly, I didn't know that he was the sword devil at that time. Now that I know, I will try my best to fight for him. Huaimo's face didn't turn red, and his heart didn't beat fast. You are really shameless. Bei Xian Elder's hair and beard stood on end as he glared at Huaimo's. Sacred Cliff College finally had a chance to pick up the sword devil, but Huaimo went back on his words. In this way, it was obvious that the sword devil would choose a college. Even Bei Xian Elder himself didn't think that Yi Guchen would abandon the top of the 5 colleges and choose Sacred Cliff College, the last of the 5 colleges. Yi Guchen's eyes were still calm. He didn't feel any joy because of Huaimo's recruitment. This was because he saw Hua Tengfei standing behind Huaimo. At this moment, Hua Tengfei's eyes were also cold. If Yi Guchen chose Tensei College, he would be in a lot of trouble. Yi Guchen had also heard that Tensei College seemed to be completely controlled by the Hua family. He had cut off one of Hua Tengfei's arms and made Hua Xingjie so miserable. Joining Tensei College was no different from asking for trouble. Besides, the sword monk Xuanlian, who ranked 4th on the sword roll, was in Sacred Cliff College. Therefore, Yi Guchen didn't think too much about it and said directly, I choose Sacred Cliff College. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone fell silent. Chapter 9:11. Many people thought that they were hallucinating. However, there were even more people who didn't believe it. Dugubai, what did you just say? Say it again. Even Elder Huaimo thought that he had misheard. Although they were both part of the 5 great colleges, the difference between Tensei College and Sacred Cliff College was like heaven and earth. Anyone with the slightest discernment ability would know which academy to choose. I choose the Divine Cliff Academy. Yi Guchen was neither servile nor overbearing, and his tone was indifferent. Mu Xingzu didn't say anything, even though she knew that Sacred Cliff College was the weakest of the 5 great colleges. However, Yi Guchen must have his reasons for choosing Sacred Cliff College. Mu Xingzu wouldn't influence Yi Guchen's decision. Am I dreaming? Bei Xian Elder was stunned. Yi Guchen's choice was a blessing from the heavens for Sacred Cliff College. In the past 5 academies selection, there had never been a champion who chose the Divine Cliff Academy. Dugubai, do you know how stupid your choice is? Huaimo's face darkened. Since Yi Guchen was willing to join Tensei College, Huaimo naturally wouldn't care about Hua Xingjie. He would even pull Yi Guchen into the Hua family and train him to become the pride of the Hua family. However, he didn't expect Yi Guchen to be so tactless. It's my freedom to choose. Elder, you don't have to interfere. Yi Guchen's expression was cold. He didn't like Huaimo's attitude. Yi Guchen's choice caused an uproar. The Purple Smoke Tribal Lord and the Yellow Dragon Tribal Lord heaved a sigh of relief. With Yi Guchen's innate talent, who knew what kind of monster he would become if he was nurtured by Tensei College? However, if he were to enter Sacred Cliff College, which was ranked last among the 5 great colleges, then Yi Guchen's growth would undoubtedly be greatly limited. But what they didn't know was that Yi Guchen didn't need anyone to teach him. He only needed some resources to improve himself. The academy wasn't Yi Guchen's ultimate goal. It was just a temporary place. Yi Guchen's real goal was to become the Sword Son, participate in the Battle of Prodigies, and join an Overlord-level force. Good, very good. Huaimo took a deep breath. This was the first time a prodigy had rejected Tensei College's request. When Han Lingxian saw that Yi Guchen had joined Sacred Cliff College, she also chose to join Sacred Cliff College without hesitation. Kong Kong also chose to join Sacred Cliff College. Even Yen Choke had chosen the Divine Cliff Academy. Elder Huaimo's face was incomparably gloomy. Yi Guchen's action had thoroughly offended Tensei College's dignity. Old man Huaimo, a forced melon won't be sweet. Bei Xian Elder laughed heartily. He was in an extremely good mood. Elder Huaimo's face was gloomy. Every prodigy had the right to make their own choices in the 5 great colleges selection. Hua Mo couldn't force Yiguchen to join Tensei College. However, at this moment, Hua Tingfei, who was standing behind Hua Mo, suddenly stood up. His eyes were filled with resentment as he said, "Elder Hua Mo, I have something to report." "What is it?" Hua Mo's tone was cold. It was obvious that he was still angry at Yiguchen's choice. "My hand was dislocated by Dugubai," Hua Tingfei said loudly, his voice echoing in all directions. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Everyone widened their eyes in shock. No matter how bad Hua Tingfei was, he was still a member of the Hua family. In the Sword Dynasty, offending the Hua family was tantamount to courting death. "What did you say? Your hand was dislocated by Dugubai?" Hua Mo's face froze, and then a trace of joy appeared in his eyes. For him, it didn't matter whether Hua Tingfei's hand was dislocated or not, because Hua Tingfei's talent was limited. However, it couldn't be better if he could use this as an excuse to suppress Yiguchen. "Nonsense, Hua Mo, are you looking for an excuse to deal with Dugubai?" Bei Xian Elder immediately shouted. In his opinion, Hua Mo must have instructed Hua Tingfei to slander Yiguchen. "What I said is not a lie. Many people in the Cloud Dynasty can testify. Even some people here can testify. Han Lingxian, don't you agree?" Hua Tingfei took a step forward and shouted. His eyes turned to Han Lingxian. Han Lingshuan's delicate face turned pale. Who would have thought that the situation that was supposed to be settled would have such a turn of events? Seeing that Yiguchen didn't join Tensei College, Hua Tingfei immediately jumped out to make things difficult for Yiguchen. However, this was the truth. Countless gazes turned to Han Lingxian in unison. Han Lingshuan's face changed. Although she didn't want anything to happen to Yiguchen, it was difficult for her to lie in front of everyone. "There's no need to prove anything. I was the one who cut off Hua Tingfei's arm." Yiguchen put his hands behind his back and looked indifferent. The corners of many people's eyes twitched. Yiguchen was probably the only person who could say such a thing in public with such a calm attitude. After all, not everyone had the courage to offend the Hua family. "This is going to be troublesome." Bei Xian Elder's face darkened. "This Dugubai is too good at causing trouble." Shang Guanyen also murmured. "Good boy, you can still be so calm after cutting off the arm of our Hua family's disciple. Who gave you the courage?" Hua Mo's mouth curved into an undetectable smile. He wanted to lure Yiguchen into a trap. "He deserves it," Yiguchen said indifferently. Many people swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Yiguchen's words were tit for tat. "You're courting death." The Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord both sneered. Yiguchen's actions were really courting death. "Although you've made a big mistake, the Hua family is not unreasonable. We'll give you 3 choices. First, let Hua Tingfei cut off your arm. It's an eye for an eye. Second, hand over the 9 Dragon Thunder Prison as compensation. Third, join Tensei College. Not only will all the grudges be written off, but the Hua family will also train you." Hua Mo said indifferently. Once these 3 choices were made, it caused an uproar like a tide. Only a fool would choose the first choice. For a swordsman, the arm was very important. If it was cut off, even if a new arm was made with a Saint Elixir, it would be far less flexible than the original arm. The second choice was also very disadvantageous. The value of the 9 Dragon Thunder Prison was obvious. In the eyes of the crowd, the third choice seemed to be the most reliable. They didn't have to pay any price and would be trained by the Hua family. "Old man Hua Mo, you've gone too far." Bei Xian Elder was furious. This choice was obviously to force Yiguchen to join Tensei College. "Let me warn you. It's best if no one interferes in this matter. After all, Dugubai hurt a disciple of the Hua family. It's impossible for him not to pay any price." Hua Mo said coldly. In the Sword Dynasty, the Hua family's prestige was unparalleled. Bei Xian Elder's face flushed red. Hua Mo was right, and he couldn't refute it. Yiguchen's expression was still indifferent. How could he not know that if he chose the third option, then the final outcome would only be to become a puppet of the Hua clan and be used by them? "Sorry, my choice is not a single one." Chapter 9:12. Hearing Yi Guchen's words, everyone's face was full of astonishment. To some extent, Yi Guchen had indeed made the fourth choice out of the three. That was courting death. Dugubai, you're making fun of me. Hua Mo stepped out of the void and unleashed his celestial palace venerable aura. The entire sky changed color as if it was disturbed by Hua Mo's aura. As an elder of Tensei College, Hua Mo's strength was unquestionable. Feeling the oncoming storm, Yi Guchen stood in the void and did not move at all. His black hair fluttered in the wind and his expression was as calm as water. Everyone was slightly speechless when they saw this scene. It was indeed impressive to be able to maintain such composure in front of a venerable. Keep pretending. Let's see how you're going to deal with this. At this moment, Hua Shengjie, Yu Shuangyan, Yin Wufeng, and the others, who had been beaten up by Yi Guchen, woke up. Although they still couldn't move, at least they were still conscious. Yu Shuangyan looked at Yi Guchen in the sky with resentment. She wanted to know how Yi Guchen would deal with this situation. Hua Shengjie, Yin Wufeng, and the others were also staring at him. Han Lingshuan's heart clenched. In her eyes, the Hua family was a giant that she could only look up to. Although Yi Guchen was amazing, he hadn't grown up yet. Compared to the Hua family, it was like an ant trying to shake a tree. Everyone was curious about how Yi Guchen would deal with this situation. Dugubai, I'll give you one last chance. What's your choice? Venerable Hua Mo's aura covered the sky and made it difficult for many geniuses to breathe. Hua Mo, you've gone too far. Bei Xian Elder also stepped out. This is my Hua family's business. Are you sure you want to get involved? Hua Mo threatened. Bei Xian Elder was stunned. Yi Guchen had cut off Hua Tingfei's arm. This was an ironclad fact that even he had admitted to it. If Bei Xian Elder were to make a move, he would not be in the right. Duga Boundless, weren't you arrogant? Now you have nothing to say? Hua Tingfei stood out, his face full of satisfaction. He never thought that Yi Guchen would actually walk right into his trap and openly admit this fact. It's just cutting off one of your arms. So what if I take your life? Yi Guchen's lips curled into a cold smile. Crazy. When everyone heard Yi Guchen's words, they thought he was crazy. How could he say such words in front of Hua Mo, in front of so many people? No one could protect Yi Guchen. Even if he were to become a disciple of Sacred Cliff College, it would affect the dignity of the Hua family. Dugubai, I dare you to say that again. Hua Mo was infuriated. He had originally planned to recruit Yi Guchen into the Hua family and then control him so that he could be used by the Hua family. However, Yi Guchen's attitude now could be said to be contempt for the Hua family. Dugubai, you've really lost your mind. So what if you won first place in this selection? With such a temperament, it's no wonder you're called the Sword Demon. Hua Tingfei was also furious. This person is the Sword Demon, a demon. Even the prodigies of the Purple Smoke Ridge were massacred by him. The Purple Smoke Overlord shouted. Indeed, the Sword Demon's murderous nature is too strong. If he were to be trained in the college, it would not be a blessing for the Sword Dynasty. The Yellow Dragon Overlord shouted. Their shouts caused a lot of discussion among the crowd. You're shameless. Qin Paisai and the others were so angry that their bodies trembled. They were the ones who had attacked first, but now they were slandering Yi Guchen for his murderous nature. Ah, are you done? Yi Guchen's eyes were cold. No matter what, Dugubai, I'll suppress you today so that you can repent and reflect. Hua Mo was about to attack. How dare you? Bei Xian Elder's eyes widened in anger. Yi Guchen was already a disciple of Sacred Cliff College, but Hua Mo still dared to suppress him in front of him. Just as Hua Mo was about to attack, Yi Guchen's lips curled into a cold smile. He slowly took out a token and said coldly, Open your dog eyes and see if I'm qualified to cut off Hua Tingfei's arm. The medallion was shaped like a sword, and it was shining brightly. That's the Sword Master's token. It's the Sword Master's token. How is that possible? Everyone's eyes were focused on the token in Yi Guchen's hand. Some of the lords were stunned and then lost their voices. The token was the Sword Master's token that Kempo had given to Yi Guchen. Saber 9 and Yi Guchen were the only ones who knew about the gift of the token. Therefore, Yiguchen was not afraid that his identity would be exposed if he took out the Sword Master's token. This is the Sword Master's token? Hua Mo's movements froze as if he was frozen. The Sword Master's token had special rights in the Sword Dynasty. Seeing the Sword Master's token was like seeing the Sword Master himself. In other words, the moment Yiguchen took out the Sword Master's token, his identity was comparable to the Sword Master. The Sword Master's status in the Sword Dynasty was equivalent to that of the princes of other dynasties. Would Hua Mo dare to suppress a prince in front of everyone? No, I don't believe it. How can you have the Sword Master's token? Or you? Hua Tingfei shook his head in disbelief, his breathing almost stopped. The Sword Master's token was extremely rare. There were only a few pieces in the entire Sword Dynasty. It's fake, it must be fake. Hua Xingjie, Yu Shuangyan, and the others also couldn't believe it. Do you know the consequences of forging the Sword Master's token in the Sword Dynasty? Hua Mo said coldly. The Sword Master's token represented the Sword Master's identity. In the Sword Dynasty, if someone was found to have forged the Sword Master's token, they would be executed immediately. Young Master Dugu. Han Lingshuan's heart tightened. Not to mention the outsiders, even Han Lingxian and the others couldn't believe that Yiguchen had the Sword Master's token. The Sword Master's token was too rare, and there were only a few pieces in total. Han Lingxian knew that Yiguchen came from another dynasty, so how could he have the Sword Dynasty's Sword Master's token? You can try it. Yiguchen threw the Sword Master's token to Bei Xian Elder. Bei Xian Elder caught the token and looked at it. His eyes were filled with shock and doubt. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Bei Xian Elder. Whether the Sword Master's token was real or fake, these elders could tell at a glance. It's the real Sword Master's token. Hua Mo, you can take a look if you don't believe me. Bei Xian Elder said and handed the Sword Master's token to Hua Mo. Hua Mo snatched the token and looked at it carefully. His face instantly turned ugly. Seeing Hua Mo's expression, how could the others not know? The token Yiguchen took out was indeed the real Sword Master's token. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath. First, he broke Hua Wuxiu's sword move, then he used the 3 brilliant lights. Then he pulled out the 9-dragon thunder prison that even Hua Wuxiu couldn't pull out. Now, he even took out the Sword Master's token. How many trump cards does this sword demon Dugubai have? This. Han Lingxian was also dumbfounded. Yiguchen always exceeded her expectations. At this moment, many people looked at Hua Mo, Hua Tingfei, and the others with a hint of playfulness. Since Yiguchen took out the Sword Master's token, it would be impossible for Hua Mo to suppress and punish Yiguchen today. Chapter 9:13. Hua Mo's hand trembled with anger as he held the Sword Master token. He carefully examined the token, not letting go of any detail. He wanted to find any flaws. However, this token was given to Yiguchen by Kenpo. How could it be fake? Even if Hua Mo stared at it with his eyes wide open, he couldn't find any traces of forgery. Elder Hua Mo, it can't be real. Hua Tingfei's expression was extremely ugly. If Yiguchen didn't have any tricks up his sleeve, he was destined to fall into the hands of the Hua family. However, Yiguchen had the Sword Master token, so it was a different story. As a prince, cutting off Hua Tingfei's arm wasn't a big deal. Not to mention Hua Tingfei, even cutting off Hua Wuxiu's arm wouldn't be a big deal. The Sword Master had such a high status in the Sword Dynasty. This was also the reason why all the geniuses of the Sword Dynasty wanted to compete for the position of Sword Master. Hua Mo threw the Sword Master token to Yiguchen with a cold face. Yiguchen kept it with a calm expression. The Sword Master token is extremely rare and precious in the Sword Dynasty. Where did you get it from? Hua Mo questioned. Do I need to tell you? Yiguchen's eyes darkened. Hua Mo had made things difficult for Yiguchen over and over again. This made Yiguchen's heart turn cold. Enough, Tuimo. Do you really think the Hua family can cover the sky in the Sword Dynasty? Since Duguwubai took out the Sword Master token, his status is just like a Sword Master. Are you going to question a Sword Master? Bei Xian Elder couldn't stand it anymore and shouted coldly. Hua Mo's expression changed when he heard this. With his status, he really didn't have the qualifications to question a sword master. Elder, let's just forget about it. My arm. Hua Tengfei was disgusted as if he had eaten a fly. He thought that he could use this opportunity to target Yi Guchen and embarrass him. Who would have thought that he would be the one embarrassed? What else can I do, you trash? Hua Mo slapped Hua Tengfei and sent him flying. Hua Tengfei spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was swollen like a bun. You trash, your talent is mediocre, and you only know how to cause trouble for the family all day long. Hua Mo couldn't find anyone to vent his anger on, so he could only vent his anger on Hua Tengfei and violently slap his face. If there was no enmity between Hua Tengfei and Yi Guchen, perhaps Hua Mo could find a way to remedy the situation. Hua Tengfei was stunned by the slap. His face was bruised and the corners of his mouth were cracked. Looking at the Hua family members who could only swallow their broken teeth, many of the feudal lords present were speechless. Some of the lords from the rogue cultivator camp looked at Yi Guchen with admiration. In the Sword Dynasty, it had been a long time since anyone dared to directly oppose the Hua family. Yi Guchen's action could be said to be against universal condemnation. How could it be like this? The faces of the purple smoke feudal lord and the yellow dragon feudal lord turned ashen. The moment Yi Guchen took out the sword sun token, they knew in their hearts that they couldn't take revenge. In the Sword Dynasty, taking revenge on a sword son was like courting death. Although Yi Guchen wasn't a real sword son, as long as he had the sword sun token, he was a sword son. Qin Zhen, Qin Paisai, Han Lingxian, and the others had their horizons broadened. Yi Guchen was like a real dragon that was lying dormant in the grass. Once he made a move, it was shocking. The more I look at this kid, the more I like him. Bei Xian Elder smiled. Just when everyone thought that the storm would end, a faint voice suddenly sounded. A faint voice suddenly spread from the sky. Heroes come from the young. Today, you have opened my eyes. Although the voice wasn't loud, it seemed to reach everyone's ears. Yi Guchen's eyes narrowed, and he frowned slightly. He had experienced this kind of power before. In the void, space twisted, and an old man in a purple and gold robe appeared. The void around him trembled slightly, as if it couldn't withstand the vigorous power in the old man's body. This old man was a false saint expert. First Elder. Seeing this, Hua Mo bowed. It's the first elder of Tensei College, Hua Yuntao. He's a false saint expert. The crowd was in an uproar. A false saint expert was definitely a top existence in the entire Sword Dynasty. They were the pillars of the dynasty. Hua Yuntao was not only the first elder of Tensei College, but also a false saint expert of the Hua family. He's here? Bei Xian Elder's face froze. In front of Hua Yuntao, he wasn't qualified to say anything. They weren't even on the same level. Why is the first elder of Tensei College here? It's most likely because of the commotion caused by the 3 great heavenly gates that attracted the attention of these big shots. Some people guessed. In the past 5 academies selection, the false saint experts of the 5 academies wouldn't appear. This time, Yi Guchen must have attracted the attention of these big shots because he triggered the 3 lights illuminating the world. Dugaubai, you're indeed admirable. In this world, there's no hatred that can't be resolved. If you join Tensei College, everything will be written off. The first elder, Hua Yuntao, said calmly. As soon as these words came out, many people sighed with emotion. He was indeed a false saint first elder. His bearing and breadth of mind were definitely not comparable to Hua Mo and the others. But how could Yi Guchen believe Hua Yuntao's words? He and the Hua family had already formed quite a bit of enmity. It could be said that Yi Guchen became famous by stepping on the Hua family's genius. Hua Yuntao seemed to be quite broad-minded, but he also wanted to control Yi Guchen and use him for the Hua family. Thank you for your kindness, First Elder, but I've already chosen Sacred Cliff College. I can only say sorry, Yi Guchen said calmly. He actually refused. Everyone was stunned. A false saint First Elder had personally invited him. How could he be so untactful? Dugaubai is too arrogant. Hua Xingjie, Yin Wufeng, Yushuang Yan, and the other geniuses couldn't help but say. Not to mention them, even the onlookers around felt that Yi Guqin was a little arrogant. A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. You may not understand. Well, I'll let you join Tensei College first. Then you'll naturally understand my painstaking efforts. Hua Yuntao said and waved his hand lightly. Yi Guqin immediately felt that the surrounding air was compressed and the void seemed to have condensed into a cage to imprison him. Mu Xingzu and Yi Guqin stood side by side and also felt the pressure of this aura. Hua Yuntao was going to take Yi Guqin away by force. Elder Hua, don't you think you've gone too far? Bei Xian Elder suppressed his anger and said, such an unpolished gem will only be buried in Sacred Cliff College. Hua Yuntao didn't care about Bei Xian Elder at all. He looked at Yi Guqin, who was being imprisoned and was about to be taken away by force. Everyone in the audience sighed in their hearts. Who could stop a false saint first elder? No one can control the path of the sword demon. I'll decide my own path. Yi Guqin's long hair fluttered in the wind as he shouted coldly. A vigorous aura suddenly burst out. At the same time, the Azura sword Dao exploded, and the blood-red sword light swept out in all directions. He held the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand, and endless lightning accompanied by the blood-red sword light burst out. When the sword came out, it was as if the heavens were falling and all living beings were grieving together. Azura tribulation, the fall of all living beings. Yi Guqin didn't have any scruples and directly attacked Hua Yuntao with his sword. This move shocked the eyes of tens of thousands. Chapter 9:14. What kind of existence was a false saint? Even if they had not really passed the heavenly tribulation, they were still the strongest under the heavenly tribulation saint. Not to mention the Sword Dynasty, even in the overlord forces, the dignity of a false saint was not to be violated. But now Yi Guqin, a mere fourth-stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth, dared to draw his sword against a false saint. Crazy. Everyone thought that Yi Guqin had gone crazy. No false saint could tolerate the provocation of an ant. Not to mention that an existence like Yi Guqin was inferior to an ant in front of a false saint. At best, he could only be regarded as dust. The blood-red sword Qi seemed to want to cut through the 8 desolate lands. Mixed with the lightning power of the 9-dragon thunder prison, it had a terrifying power that could break the 10 realms of the heavens. Hua Xingjie, Yushuang Yan and the others saw this scene, their pupils trembling. If Yi Guqin had used this method against them before, then there would not even be a speck of them left. Is this the true strength of young Master Dugu? Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai and the others were completely dumbfounded. The Azura sword Dao plus the life fall plus the 9-dragon thunder prison. It would not be easy for the divine dwelling heaven prides in the top 10 of the sword ranking to receive this sword. Jiang Fengmian's face froze, his pupils revealing an unprecedented seriousness. He did have a trace of contempt for Yi Guqin before. However, this sliver of disdain vanished like smoke under this sword. The strength that Yi Guqin had shown was enough to threaten the top 10 heaven prides in the sword ranking. Young man, are you really so stupid? Hua Yuntao's face was still indifferent, but his tone was a little cold. Yi Guqin dared to draw his sword against him, which was an insult and contempt to a false saint. Hua Yuntao made a grabbing motion with one hand, and the terrifying sword light directly shattered in the void. The gap between Yi Guqin and a false saint was too big. There was no way to make up for this gap. Unless Yi Guqin sacrificed himself again and borrowed the sword from the heavens. Since that's the case, I'll give you a small punishment. Hua Yuntao's 5 fingers closed, and his true qi resonated with the void. Yi Guqin immediately felt that the surrounding air seemed to have become harder than metal. It was as if there were countless iron walls were pressing against him. Although a false saint expert's ability to control over space was a true saint expert, it was much stronger than a true saint expert. Cough. Yi Guqin felt as if he was being crushed by a mountain. His bones were cracking and his skin seemed to be on the verge of cracking. Blood flowed down from the corner of Yi Guqin's mouth. Not only that, but Mu Xingzhu, who was beside him, was also affected. Yi Xian was of Xian Shui was Yi? Yi Su Xian was to Xian. Mu Xingzu stood by Yi Guqin's side and endured Hua Yuntao's pressure. No. I'll go through thick and thin with you. Everyone looked at Yi Guqin, who was coughing up blood. Many people in the crowd sighed. This was the consequence of offending the dignity of a false saint expert. Ah, good. So what if you're a genius? In the hands of the first elder, you're just a bug that can be crushed to death. Hua Xingjie laughed, feeling very carefree. Yushuang Yan in Wufeng and the others were also very satisfied. The Purple Smoke Lord and the Yellow Dragon Lord were even more carefree. They couldn't wait for Hua Yuntao to crush Yi Guqin to death. This is too much. Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and the others clenched their fists. A false saint expert actually dared to disregard his status and attack a junior of the heaven and earth spiritual bridge. Elder Hua, that's enough. No matter what, Dugubai is already a disciple of Sacred Cliff College, Bei Xian Elder said coldly, suppressing the anger in his heart. Dugubai, do you repent? Hua Yuntao said indifferently. Repent? Haha. Who in this world can make the sword demon repent? Yi Guqin's black hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes were firm, and his tone was resolute. His body was covered in wounds, and blood was seeping out. No matter how strong Yi Guqin's body was, it was impossible for him to resist the attack of a false saint expert. Blood was seeping out from Yi Guqin's 7 apertures. At that moment, Yi Guqin looked like a man made of blood. It was a rather terrifying sight. Master! Mu Xingzu felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. Most of Hua Yuntao's attacks were oppressing Yi Guqin, and Mu Xingzu was only slightly affected. However, even this small impact was enough to break Mu Xingzu's delicate body. She could not imagine what kind of pressure Yi Guqin, who was in the center of the pressure, was under. See, it's not that this old man is unreasonable, but the young people nowadays are too stubborn. Hua Yuntao shook his head slightly. He had no intention of stopping. Looking at Yi Guqin, who would rather die than submit, those who thought Yi Guqin was too arrogant all shut their mouths. Yi Guqin's performance left them speechless. I'm Qin Jin, the Lord of Heavenly Wind. I beg the Great Elder to be merciful. Suddenly, a loud and clear voice rang out like a sudden clap of thunder. Qin Jin knelt on one knee and cupped his fists toward Hua Yuntao. Yi Guqin was a great benefactor to Heavenly Wind Ridge. Qin Jin could not bear to see Yi Guqin suffer such torture. I'm Lu Yun, the Lord of Dongyan. I beg the Great Elder to stop. I'm Yen Lang, the Lord of Cloudy Mountain. I beg the Great Elder to stop. I'm Gu Zhen, the Lord of Pingyang. I beg the Great Elder to stop. Qin Jin's actions were like a chain reaction. One by one, the lords of the Sword Dynasty knelt on one knee and begged Hua Yuntao to stop. Most of these lords were from the Free Cultivator camp. They admired Yi Guqin's character. At this moment, they were willing to speak up for Yi Guqin. Hua Yuntao's expression changed for the first time. He frowned slightly. In just a short moment, hundreds of lords knelt on one knee and begged. These pleading voices formed a vast sound wave that covered the sky and earth and resounded through the universe. Great Elder, please stop. 1 or 2 lords did not mean much. But now, hundreds of lords had spoken up. That was equivalent to hundreds of supremacies. Even Hua Yuntao could not turn a blind eye to it. Great Elder, please stop. Han Lingxian, Qin Paisai, and other prodigies spoke up. Elder of Tensei College, please stop. Gui Jianchou, Yen Chou, and other prodigies also spoke up in unison. For a moment, everyone except the lords and prodigies of the aristocratic families. Everyone else spoke up to plead for Yi Guqin. Are you rebelling? Can I even punish you a little? Hua Yuntao's tone was cold. Even with his identity as a false sage, he felt a sense of suffocation in his chest at this moment. These lords and prodigies dared to go against his authority as a false sage for Yi Guqin. Elder Hua, this is what the people want. Please stop. Bei Xian Elder also shouted loudly. All these voices turned into monstrous sound waves that swept through the sky and shook Hua Yuntao's eardrums. His expression was slightly ugly. The authority of a false sage could not overcome the people's hearts. However, right at this moment, A charming voice that caused one to feel numb to the bones suddenly resounded in the heavens and the earth. Old Ghost Hua, with your status, you still have the nerve to attack a junior. You can be considered to have returned to life. As this voice sounded, a beautiful and charming figure appeared in the void. Chapter 9:15. Everyone's gaze was snatched away by this beautiful figure. In the void, a beautiful figure appeared. It was an extremely mature and charming woman. She wore a tight-fitting red cheongsam that outlined her exquisite and curvaceous figure, just like a ripe peach. She had a perfect face, bright red lips, and sparkling white teeth. She was extremely charming and seductive. Her long black hair casually fell to her slender waist, which made her look lazy and charming. Looking at this beautiful figure that suddenly appeared, the world was speechless. That round and smooth figure made many of the men present swallow a mouthful of saliva, feeling their mouths and tongues go dry. Kong Kong's eyes swept across the woman's chest, and he couldn't help but feel his nose heat up and blood spurted out of it. Oh my God, magnificent and turbulent! Kong Kong covered his nose with both hands, trying to prevent himself from bleeding to death. The woman who suddenly appeared and stunned everyone was now looking at Hua Yuntao with a smile, but there was a dangerous light in her eyes. Old Hua, you dare to bully a disciple of Tianxian College? Aren't you afraid that I'll break your old bones? This woman was charming and graceful. However, the way she spoke had a hint of a domineering masculine woman. She stretched out her slender hand and made a grasping motion in the direction of Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu. Yi Guchen immediately felt the space around him relax. The woman's move removed Hua Yuntao's oppression. Mu Xingzu's delicate body trembled, and she stopped moving. She gasped for breath and cast a grateful look at the charming woman. What? Dean, that woman is the legendary beautiful dean of Tianxian College, Wu Hongyan? Hearing Mu Xingzu's words, many people present were speechless. The 5 deans of the 5 major colleges were all pseudo-saint experts. Although their reputation spread throughout the Sword Dynasty, few people had seen the true faces of the 5 deans. After all, pseudo-saint experts were not easy to see. This mature and beautiful woman in a red cheongsam was Wu Hongyan, the dean of Tianxian College and a saint expert. Wu Hongyan, are you really going to intervene? Hua Yuntao's expression turned serious. He did not expect Wu Hongyan to be here. How could I not know that the 3 lights illuminated the world and shook the Sword Dynasty? But you, when I wasn't here, you attacked the people of Tianxian College. How do you want to settle this debt? Wu Hongyan's tone seemed to be joking, but there was a hint of danger in it. I am educating this Dugubai. It has nothing to do with the female student of Tianxian College, Hua Yuntao said righteously. Is that so? Then, Wu Hongyan giggled. Suddenly, she raised her jade-like hand and pressed downwards. Hua Yuntao's expression changed slightly. He did not expect Wu Hongyan to attack so directly. There was a loud bang. Hua Xingjie in Wufeng Yushuang Yan and the others on Thunder Prison Mountain were directly pressed into a deep pit. Blood gushed out of their mouths, and their bones were shattered. They fainted. Although Wu Hongyan's palm did not kill Hua Xingjie and the others, it was equivalent to crippling them. Looking at the miserable state of Hua Xingjie and the others, many people present swallowed a mouthful of saliva. They no longer looked at Wu Hongyan with the same infatuation as before. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of fear and dread. This dean seemed to be a little violent. Wu Hongyan, don't make a mistake. Hua Yuntao's aura fluctuated, and the wind and clouds changed color. Let's call it even. Old man, if you want to fight, I will accompany you to the end. Wu Hongyan's voice was extremely soft, but at this moment, she spoke in a domineering tone. Hua Yuntao's old face twitched. Facing Wu Hongyan, he really did not have any advantage. Seeing that Hua Yuntao, the fake saint first elder of Tensei College, was defeated by Wu Hongyan, many people sighed. Many people sighed in their hearts. Wu Hongyan was indeed extraordinary to be able to become the dean of the academy as a woman. At this moment, the atmosphere was a little tense. Wu Hongyan's figure flashed in front of Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu. She looked at Yi Guchen with a pair of charming eyes and slightly narrowed her eyes. I will deal with you later. Yi Guchen was slightly taken aback, but he thought about it on second thought. It was probably about Mu Xingzu. Just as the atmosphere on Thunder Prison Mountain was gloomy, a faint laughter was heard. Well, Dean Wu, Elder Hua, let's end this here. Don't let others see the 5 colleges as a joke. A kind-looking old man with a sage-like aura appeared. He held a horsetail whisk in his hand and his white robe fluttered in the wind. The most eye-catching thing was that the old man's eyebrows were connected into a line. Although the old man's aura was not as strong as Wu Hongyan's or Hua Yuntao's, it was only a little bit weaker. First Elder Imei. Bei Xian Elder saw who it was and heaved a sigh of relief. This first Elder Imei was the first elder of Sacred Cliff College, also known as Venerable Im. First Elder Imei was a 9th Heaven Venerable. From this, one could see the difference between Sacred Cliff College and Tensei College. Tensei College's first elder was a fake saint expert, while Sacred Cliff College's first elder was only a 9th Heaven Venerable. Although today's matter was unpleasant, no matter what, Dugubai has already joined Sacred Cliff College. Elder Hua, it's about time, First Elder Imei said calmly. I'm teaching the younger generation. Hua Yuntao's face darkened slightly. He originally wanted to force Yi Guchen to join Tensei College, but now it seemed that he had suffered a double loss. Not only did he have a grudge with Yi Guchen, but Hua Xingjie was also half crippled. At the thought of this, Hua Yuntao looked at Yi Guchen with a cold gaze. In his opinion, it was all because of Yi Guchen's ignorance that led to the current situation. Elder Hua, since Dugubai is a disciple of Sacred Cliff College, then he should be taught by Sacred Cliff College. You don't have to worry about it. Also, the dean asked me to pass a message to you. First Elder Imei said calmly. What message? Hua Yuntao frowned slightly. Sacred Cliff College was the weakest of the 5 major colleges. However, the dean of Sacred Cliff College was one of the strongest among the 5 deans. The dean said to stop before going too far. First Elder Imei said meaningfully. Hua Yuntao flung his sleeves. The dean of Sacred Cliff College was obviously warning him not to go too far. Even if he had the Hua family's background, he couldn't be fearless. Hua Yuntao exhaled deeply and looked at Yi Guchen. Dugubai, a fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. I'll give you one last warning. Only by joining Tensei College can you truly grow. If you join, I'm confident that you'll be able to pass the 10th level of Mount St. Crossing and become a disciple of the Holy Emblem in a year's time. As soon as Hua Yuntao spoke these words, it caused the surroundings to be astounded, and it gave rise to a mighty uproar. Chapter 9:16. What? A year later, Dugubai will be able to pass the 10th level of Mount St. Crossing? TSK, that's not a small promise. How many Holy Emblem disciples are there in the 5 academies? Back then, Hua Wuxiu had to prepare for about a year and a half before he could pass the 10th level of Mount St. Crossing. Hua Yuntao's words shocked everyone, and they began to whisper to each other. Mount St. Crossing was known by everyone in the Sword Dynasty. Mount St. Crossing? Yi Guchen was slightly puzzled. He had vaguely heard of it before, but he didn't know much about it. Mu Xingzu saw the puzzlement in Yi Guchen's eyes and explained, Mount St. Crossing is one of the 4 great mystic realms of the Sword Dynasty. It's a treasured place to test the growth and talent of a prodigy. What's the difference between it and the 3 sky gates? Yi Guchen was curious. Mount St. Crossing has a total of 20 levels, and the test on each level is different. As long as you can pass the 10th level, it means that you have the possibility of becoming a false saint expert in the future. You can also become a Holy Emblem disciple recognized by all 5 academies. I see. Yi Guchen's eyes revealed a strange look. And if you can pass the 15th level, you are almost certain to become a false saint in the future, Mu Xingzu said. What if you can pass the 20th level? Yi Guchen asked again. No one in the Sword Dynasty has ever been able to do it. But rumor has it that if someone can reach the top of Mount St. Crossing, then he is a legendary natural saint. Natural saint? Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. Natural saint means that if you don't fall in the future, you are destined to become a heavenly tribulation saint. When Mu Xingzhu said this, her tone was filled with admiration and longing. Not to mention the Sword Dynasty, even in the entire South Horizon region, how many people could be called natural saints? Perhaps only a few prodigies like Di Haoyan could be called natural saints. So that's how it is. Then what level have you reached? Yi Guchen asked. He remembered that Mu Xingzhu was also a disciple of the Holy Emblem, which meant that she had at least passed the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing. Xingzhu only barely passed the 15th level. Mu Xingzhu said in embarrassment. Yi Guchen smiled faintly and said, "Not bad at all." Being able to pass the 15th floor meant that Mu Xingzhu was very likely to become a false saint in the future. No wonder Wu Hongyan valued Mu Xingzhu so much. Yi Guchen knew that Mu Xingzhu was not very talented. She might not even be a venerable, let alone a false saint. However, Mu Xingzhu had received Ying Ning's inheritance. She had the innate magical powers of an 8th-class heavenly talent, the immortal soul pearl, which had greatly increased her talent. That was why she had the chance to become a false saint. Yi Guchen thought about it and became curious again. Given his talent, how many levels of Mount Saint Crossing could he pass? Could he reach the top and become a natural saint, which all the heavenly talents of the Sword Dynasty could not become? Yi Guchen was interested in Mount Saint Crossing. Duguwubai, what do you think? As long as you join Tensei College, I guarantee that there will be enough resources to train you. You can break through to the divine dwelling stage within a year. Given your talent, let alone the 10th level, it is not impossible for you to reach the 15th level, Hua Yuntao said in a low voice. In his view, all the heavenly talents could not resist this temptation. The older the ginger, the spicier it is. This condition is really too tempting. Yes, if it were me, I would definitely agree. There were many whispers in the audience. Some heavenly talents looked at Yi Guchen with undisguised envy. 1 year was enough for Yi Guchen to reach the 10th level of Mount Saint Crossing. This condition was really too tempting. This, head elder Ime. Bei Xian elder looked at Ime and hesitated. Ime looked at Yi Guchen indifferently and said, "Dugubai, actually, the dean also asked me to pass a message to you." Oh. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. What can the dean of the Divine Cliff sect offer? Hua Yuntao snorted. Everyone else also perked up their ears to listen. Ime cleared her throat and said, "The dean said that if you join Sacred Cliff College, you will be treated the same as all the other disciples. You have to fight for everything yourself." That's it? Bei Xian elder was stunned. That's it, head elder Ime said indifferently. The crowd wore strange looks on their faces. What was the dean of Sacred Cliff College thinking? Did he still want to recruit the sword demon? Interesting. Hua Yuntao couldn't help but laugh. The dean of the Divine Cliff College really didn't play by the rules. But so what? Even a fool would know how to choose, right? Wu Hongyan looked at Yi Guchen. She was also very curious about what this master, who made Mu Xingzhu follow him willingly, would choose. At this moment, Yi Guchen was the center of attention. They all wanted to know if Yi Guchen would change his choice. Haha. Hua Yuntao, you underestimate me, Dugubai, Yi Guchen said indifferently. What do you mean? Hua Yuntao's face darkened. Yi Guchen dared to call him by his name. This was a great disrespect to a false saint. It's just Mount Saint Crossing, why do I need to borrow the power of the college? In 3 months, I, Dugubai, will break through Mount Saint Crossing. Yi Guchen raised his head, his black hair fluttering in the wind. It was as if he could soar to the clouds and swallow thousands of miles. The moment his voice fell, the surrounding void sword chi exploded, and the sky changed color. One word, the world turned upside down. Dead silence. As if all sound had been extracted, the world was dead silent. At this moment, whether it was Yi Guchen's friends, companions, or enemies, they were all dumbfounded. In 3 months, break through Mount Saint Crossing. What kind of arrogant words were these? Even Hua Wuxiu, who was third on the sword ranking, had prepared for a year and a half before breaking through Mount St. Crossing. He had also received a lot of training from Tensei College and the Hua family. Yi Guqin was only at the Spirit Bridge stage, not even at the Divine Dwelling stage. Ime had also expressed that she would not give Yi Guqin any special treatment. In addition, there were only 3 months left. What qualifications did Yi Guqin have to break through Mount St. Crossing? Even if he did break through, how many levels could he pass? Arrogant brat! Hua Yuntao roared, unable to restrain his anger. Yi Guqin's words, in his eyes, were indeed extremely arrogant. Let alone Hua Yuntao, even those who supported Yi Guqin felt that Yi Guqin's words were too arrogant. Sigh, little friend Dugu is still too impulsive. Qin Zhen sighed deeply. Mount St. Crossing was one of the 4 great secret domains of the Sword Dynasty. How could it be so easy to break through? Hua Wuxiu and the others had to be fully prepared if they were to attempt the trial. Young Master Dugu, sigh. Han Lingxian bit her lip, also sighing. Yi Guqin had indeed created many miracles. But Mount St. Crossing was a place that tested the aptitude of a saint. It was not something that could be easily passed. Otherwise, there would be more than just a few Holy Emblem disciples in the entire Sword Dynasty. A little domineering, but unfortunately he is still a little impulsive. There was a hint of admiration in Wu Hongyan's beautiful eyes. After all, her personality could also be considered domineering. Yi Guqin's personality was very much to her liking. But as a matter of fact, even Wu Hongyan believed that no matter how talented Yi Guqin was, 3 months was too short to change anything. Passing through the holy mountain with such strength, not to mention the 10th floor, even passing through the 3rd floor would be a miracle. Chapter 9:17. Yi Guqin's words indeed shocked everyone. But after the uproar, the majority of people looked at Yi Guqin with suspicion. It was understandable for a young man to be frivolous. But if it was pure arrogance, it would appear a little ignorant. As one of the 4 great secret domains of the Sword Dynasty, Mount St. Crossing had always been respected by many experts. To pass the 10th level of Mount St. Crossing and become a disciple of the Holy Emblem was the goal of all the heaven prides of the 5 great academies. In the face of Mount St. Crossing, even someone as strong as Hua Wuxiu had to carefully prepare and go all out. And Yi Guqin's words, in the eyes of others, were not only looking down on Mount St. Crossing, but also stepping on the heaven prides who regarded Mount St. Crossing as a sacred goal. I originally asked for this Duguwubai because I admired his courage to face the Hua family and the false saint, but now it seems that Duguwubai's temperament still needs to be sharpened. Yes, he dared to say such words without knowing Mount St. Crossing. He is a little ignorant. Some lords also revealed a look of disappointment. They admired Yi Guqin for being able to face the pressure of the Hua family. They thought that the unaffiliated cultivator camp had finally produced a heaven pride who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Hua Wuxiu. However, Yi Guqin's current performance had left them slightly disappointed. Dugubai, you don't have to be like this. Bei Xian Elder also advised. In his view, given Yi Guqin's talent, he might be able to pass the 10th level if he cultivated wholeheartedly for a year and broke through to the Divine Dwelling stage. As for 3 months, it was really too rushed. Even Great Elder Imei's face was a little solemn, but he didn't say anything. Feeling the many questioning gazes around, Yi Guqin's expression was calm and collected. Mount St. Crossing may be an insurmountable moat in the eyes of others. But for Yi Guqin, such a challenge was interesting. Good boy, since you are so confident, why don't you make a bet with me? Hua Yuntao squinted his eyes, revealing a trace of coldness. What are we betting? Yi Guqin asked calmly. In 3 months, if you can pass the 10th level of Mount St. Crossing, my Hua family will do its best to satisfy you. Of course, if you can't pass, then this old man won't make things difficult for you, as long as you join my Hua family, Hua Yuntao said. Oh! Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows. Joining the Hua family was tantamount to controlling Yi Guqin and turning Yi Guqin into a dog of the Hua family. Dugubai, you don't have to agree. Bei Xian Elder said hurriedly. He was afraid that Yi Guqin would agree to Hua Yuntao's bet. But can your Hua family give me what I want? Yi Guchen sneered. What do you want? Hua Yuntao asked calmly. Yi Guchen then listed a few things, including soul crystals, sacred soul medicine, and the materials needed to refine his doppelganger. Hua Yuntao squinted his eyes and said, We don't have any sacred soul medicine, but the Hua family has one bone molding pill. Yi Guchen said with a deep look in his eyes. He knew in his heart that it was impossible for such a large Hua clan to not have even a single stalk of soul-type panacea. Hua Yuntao must also know that the sacred soul medicine might be helpful to Yi Guchen's cultivation. So he didn't take it out. But the bone molding pill was only useful for people who were missing limbs or had broken bones. Hua Yuntao couldn't see why Yi Guchen wanted the bone molding pill. So he directly threw out the bone molding pill. The sight. Bei Xian Elder sighed deeply. Hua Yuntao's bet had completely trapped Yi Guchen. In everyone's eyes, this was a bet that had already been decided. In the end, Yi Guchen would still be pulled into the Hua family. This kid is still too young and ignorant. Hua Mo sneered. What was the use of creating such a storm? In the end, it was all in vain. Okay, let's go. Dugubai, I'll be waiting for you at Mount St. Crossing in 3 months. If you don't keep your promise. Hua Yuntao's voice suddenly turned cold, and the temperature of the surroundings seemed to drop. Don't worry, I won't go so far as to break my promise, Yi Guchen said casually. Hua Yuntao was expressionless as he left with Hua Mo and the other members of Tensei College, as well as the prodigies who had joined Tensei College. Following the departure of Heavenly Saint Academy, the tense atmosphere in the area suddenly relaxed. Heroes come from the young. When the time comes, Long River College will definitely be there to watch the ceremony. Elder Yin Li from Long River College sneered. Yin Wufeng from the Yin family had also been beaten up badly by Yi Guchen. Naturally, Yin Li didn't have a good impression of Yi Guchen. After that, the people from Long River College also left with a group of prodigies. Brother Dugu's courage is admirable. In 3 months, I will also go to Mount St. Crossing to watch the ceremony. When the time comes, I hope that Brother Dugu will not be stingy with his guidance. Jiang Fengmian smiled faintly and elegantly. What does Jiang Fengmian mean? Is he going to step on Dugu Wubai as well? Many people were surprised. Jiang Fengmian? Mu Xingzhu frowned. She felt that Jiang Fengmian was targeting Yi Guchen because of her. It's okay. I will naturally fight with young Master Jiang in the future, Yi Guchen said. Goodbye. Jiang Fengmian saluted. Hey, Dubai, although you are not weak, don't brag too much. My cousin will probably fight with you, Shangguan Yan said. Yi Guchen was puzzled. It's Shangguan Jingshan, that annoying guy. Mu Xingzhu mumbled. It seems that you are quite popular. Yi Guchen did not mind and smiled faintly. No. Xingzhu has never cared about any man except. Mu Xingzhu blushed and mumbled. You don't have to care about my feelings when it comes to relationships. If it is suitable, you can decide for yourself, Yi Guchen said. Mu Xingzhu twisted her fingers together and sighed in her heart. After seeing how outstanding Yi Guchen was, which man could enter Mu Xingzhu's eyes? If you underestimate my cousin, you will suffer. Shangguan Yan saw that Yi Guchen was not nervous at all and could not help but snort. After that, Shangguan Yan also left with the people from Sun Moon College. Only the people from Sacred Cliff College and Tianxian College were left in the entire Thunder Prison Mountain. The atmosphere was no longer as tense as before. It was obvious that the relationship between these two colleges was quite good. Dugu Ubai, your courage is commendable. Elder Imei smiled amiably. I have embarrassed myself in front of you elders. Yi Guchen cupped his fists slightly. Seeing Yi Guchen's current attitude, Elder Imei, Bei Xin Elder, and the others were all puzzled. At this moment, it seemed that Yi Guchen was not an arrogant person. Perhaps he really had the confidence to pass the sacred mountain? No matter what happens 3 months later, at least now, you are a disciple of Sacred Cliff College, Elder Imei said with a smile. Just as Yi Guchen was about to leave with Elder Imei, a mature and gentle voice suddenly sounded. Wait, I still have something to talk to this young man. Wu Hongyan's flawless face was staring at Yiguchen with a faint smile. You guys talk first, I am not in a hurry. Elder Ime coughed dryly and hurriedly retreated as if he was avoiding a tigress. Wu Hongyan was someone that even their dean did not want to provoke. It was better to stay away from a female fake saint with a violent temper. Chapter 9:18. Yiguchen remained calm when he sensed Wu Hongyan's gaze on him. He did not sense any malice from Wu Hongyan. In addition, Wu Hongyan had helped him before. Yiguchen still had good intentions toward this woman. Thank you for your help this time, Dean Wu. Yiguchen cupped his hands in salute. What Dean Wu? You're so old-fashioned. Call me big sister. Wu Hongyan raised her brows and crossed her arms. Yiguchen was speechless, and I didn't do it to help you. I did it to help that stubborn girl, Xingzhu. Wu Hongyan gritted her teeth as soon as she saw Mu Xingzhu. When Mu Xingzhu passed the 15th level of Mount St. Crossing, Wu Hongyan was naturally the happiest. This was like picking up a treasure. Wu Hongyan did not hesitate and immediately wanted to take Mu Xingzhu as her disciple. However, Mu Xingzhu rejected her. Many people could not understand why Mu Xingzhu would reject the disciple request of a false sage. In the end, Mu Xingzhu said that she already had a master. Now, the truth was out. Even Wu Hongyan did not expect that the master that Mu Xingzhu spoke of was Yiguchen. Wu Hongyan felt angry when she thought of this. Her delicate body flashed and directly appeared in front of Yiguchen. She bent down slightly. Her beautiful face was as charming as a fox immortal as she approached Yiguchen. A rich and fragrant scent wafted toward him. Yiguchen faced it calmly. Kong Kong stood beside Yiguchen. Her little face was dazed. She covered her nose with both hands again. Blood flowed out from between her fingers. The weather today is so big and so round. Kong Kong felt that she would die from excessive blood loss. Dugawubai, you stole my beloved disciple. What should you do? Wu Hongyan asked with a smile. Dean, you're too close. Mu Xingzhu couldn't help but mutter softly. Oh, the little girl is jealous. Don't worry, I won't pull out this tender grass. The person she likes is the Sword King. Wu Hongyan couldn't help but tease. Senior Wu, it's Xingzhu's decision on who she chooses as her master. I can't influence her, Yiguchen said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. What if I want you to dissolve your master-disciple relationship with Xingzhu? Wu Hongyan was still smiling, but her words seemed to freeze the air. Principalty? Mu Xingzhu's expression froze. Yiguchen's expression didn't change, and he said indifferently, unless Xingzhu is willing, I can't abandon her. Wu Hongyan took a step forward, and the aura of a false saint burst out. Yiguchen was under pressure again, but his expression didn't change. Bei Xian Elder and the others were a little nervous. They were afraid that Wu Hongyan would do something. After all, Wu Hongyan had always been fearless. She could do anything. Seeing that Yiguchen was indifferent, Wu Hongyan withdrew her aura, and her expression softened. It seems that Xingzhu didn't choose you for no reason. I don't ask for much. If you can pass the 10th level of Mount St. Crossing in 3 months, you'll still be Xingzhu's master. However, if you can't pass it, it proves that you're no longer qualified to be Xingzhu's master. Of course. Yiguchen nodded. Even Mu Xingzhu had passed the 15th level. If Yiguchen couldn't pass the 10th level, he was indeed no longer qualified to teach Mu Xingzhu. Master? Mu Xingzhu's expression changed slightly. Don't you trust me? Yiguchen smiled. Mu Xingzhu bit her lip with her pearly white teeth and nodded firmly. Seeing this, Wu Hongyan's lips curled into a faint smile. To be honest, Wu Hongyan didn't think that Yiguchen would have the strength to reach the 10th level of Mount St. Crossing in 3 months. When that time came, Wu Hongyan could take advantage of the situation and accept Mu Xingzhu as her disciple. Of course, Wu Hongyan wasn't scheming. She just wanted to train Mu Xingzhu better. Alright, let's leave it at that for the time being. Wu Hongyan waved her hand. Dean, I think. Mu Xingzhu wanted to say something but stopped. You're helping an outsider. Go ahead. However, remember that you're still a disciple of the holy emblem of Tianxian College. Wu Hongyan touched her forehead. Thank you, Din. Mu Xingzu was delighted. She knew that although the female dean was a little overbearing and violent, she was still kind at heart. Then, Wu Hongyan and the other people of Tianxian College left. Kong Kong looked at Wu Hongyan's back reluctantly. His nose was bleeding. In the end, Kong Kong, Han Lingxian, and Yen Wuka all joined Sacred Cliff College. All right, let's go back to the college. Elder Imei waved his hand. Yi Guchen and the others boarded Sacred Cliff College's ship and headed towards Sacred Cliff College. With the departure of Sacred Cliff College, the 5 academies selection also came to an end. However, one could imagine what kind of shock the appearance of Yi Guchen, the Dark Horse, would cause in the Sword Dynasty. After all, hundreds of lords and people from various aristocratic families had witnessed the rise of the Sword Demon with their own eyes. It wouldn't take long for the name of the Sword Demon to sweep through the entire Sword Dynasty like a storm. Everyone would know that another monstrous figure would rise in the Sword Dynasty. Of course, along with the fame, there would be even more criticism. After all, Yi Guchen challenging Mount St. Crossing in 3 months was indeed a little arrogant in the eyes of others. There were even some people who were hostile to Yi Guchen, such as the Hua family, the Yin family, the Yu family, and so on. They were all waiting for Yi Guchen to embarrass himself at Mount St. Crossing in 3 months. If Yi Guchen couldn't pass by then, not only would he lose Mu Xingzu as his disciple, but he would also become a slave of the Hua family. The name of the Sword Demon would also fall. In the eyes of the crowd, what could be changed in these short 3 months? Not long after the 5 academies selection ended. Somewhere in the Sword Dynasty, on top of a mountain, a pavilion was located in the middle of it. As far as the eye could see, the sea of clouds was billowing, and the scenery was spectacular. Inside the pavilion, a middle-aged man was leaning against the pavilion pillar. He was wearing a snow-white robe, and his face was incomparably handsome. There was a cinnabar mole between his eyebrows, which made the man handsome and at the same time had a sense of mystery. Beside him was a red umbrella, and one hand was holding a wine gourd. When did the human world have wine? Asking the heavens about love. The man picked up the wine gourd and took a long sip. He was unadorned and handsome, like a jade mountain that was about to collapse. At this moment, a stooped figure stepped on the sea of clouds and landed in the pavilion. The man raised his eyes and looked at the person who came. It was an old man with a stooped body and a walking stick. His snow-white beard was very long, like a horsetail whisk that dragged to the ground. If Yi Guchen was here, he would definitely be surprised. This old man was the crippled old man who asked him for wine in Thunder City. Sword King, you are really in the mood for leisure. The crippled old man looked at the middle-aged man and laughed. Confusi, is everything done? The middle-aged man's lips curved into a warm smile. If the name Confusi was passed to the ears of anyone in the Sword Dynasty, it would definitely shock them. Because the mysterious dean of Sacred Cliff College was Confusi. Chapter 919. It's done. I got Imei to do it. Yi Guchen has already joined Sacred Cliff College, Confusi said with a smile. As expected of Yi Guchen, the one who stole the primordial sword and stirred up a storm. Even in my Sword Dynasty, he's still unwilling to remain silent. Even I'm a little curious about the Mount St. Crossing in 3 months. The man called Sword Sovereign chuckled and continued drinking. I'm a little curious. When did Sword Sovereign know that Yi Guchen had come to the Sword Dynasty? Confusi asked. He has the Sword Master token. I sensed it the moment he stepped into the Sword Dynasty, but I wasn't sure. The man shook his head slightly. It's indeed surprising. I heard that Yi Guchen survived after taking the 9-death no-regrets pill. Confusi also sighed with emotion. Yi Guchen was really lucky. Perhaps this is fate? The man's eyes flickered inexplicably. Sword Sovereign, do you mean that Yi Guchen has the ability to save the Alliance Master? Confusi asked in surprise. I'm not sure, but it's rumored that he's also a member of the Sword Sect Echelon and has the primordial sword. If he performs well on Mount St. Crossing, then it's indeed possible, the man said slowly. Sword Sovereign, do Do you think that Yi Guqin can compare to your disciple, Jian Jinghong? Confuzi asked. Yi Guqin can use the primordial sword God-devouring sword, so there's no need to compete. But if he can't, Jian Jinghong has the embryonic form of the heavenly Tao sword intent. He might not be weaker than Yi Guqin, the man said indifferently. The sword intent of the creation realm is indeed powerful. But no matter what, Yi Guqin and Jian Jinghong are both candidates. It's been 5 years since the Alliance Master was trapped. Confuzi sighed slightly. The Sword Dao Alliance Master had not appeared for 5 years. Although it was announced to the public that he was in seclusion, some of the aristocratic families in the Sword Dao Alliance could no longer hold back. Over the years, the fake saint families led by the Hua family couldn't sit still and began to wantonly recruit the lords of various regions. If it weren't for Sword Sovereign, it's hard to imagine how chaotic the Sword Dynasty would be. Confuzi let out a long sigh. The identity of the man in front of him was none other than that. It was the Sword Dao Alliance's Vice Alliance leader, Sword Sovereign Heavenly Sentiment. It's not just those aristocratic families. The War God Dynasty, the Mola Dynasty, and the tyrannical Saber Dynasty are probably unable to hold themselves back as well. Heavensoft smiled faintly. The Sword Dynasty was still the leader of the 100 great dynasties. Everything seemed calm and tranquil, but a storm was brewing in the dark. If not for fear, the Sword Dao Alliance's Alliance Master would still be alive. Most likely, these forces would have already lost their patience and attacked, tearing apart the Sword Dynasty like hungry wolves. Alliance leader, is he really still here? Even Confuzi couldn't help but ask. After all, the Sword Dao Alliance's Alliance Master hadn't appeared for 5 years. Don't worry, Big Brother was able to contend against a true heavenly tribulation saint as a fake saint. He won't die so easily. Heavensoft smiled faintly, looking extremely handsome. Next, it's up to Yi Guqin's performance on Mount Saint Crossing. The matter of rescuing Big Brother can't be delayed for too long. Heavensoft got up, pinned the wine gourd to his waist, and held up the red umbrella in his hand. He stepped on the sea of clouds, as ethereal as a celestial being descending to the mortal world, handsome and ethereal. Looking at Heavensoft's departing figure, Confuzi clicked his tongue and sighed. In the 5 years that the Sword Dao Alliance's Alliance Master disappeared, the Sword Dynasty was plagued by internal and external troubles, and all the pressure was on Heavensoft. But Heavensoft was able to keep the external troubles at bay with his own strength. Outside, he intimidated the War God Dynasty, the Mola Dynasty, the tyrannical Saber Dynasty, and other powerful dynasties. Internally, he suppressed the Hua family, the Jiang family, the Yin family, the Shangguan family, and other fake saint families. If it weren't for the Sword King, the Sword Dynasty would have been in chaos. Confuzi shook his head and sighed. Although he was a fake saint expert and one of the best among the 5 deans, he still felt powerless in the face of such chaos. I really don't know if Yi Guqin is the 7th Sword Master's chosen one. If he can really rescue the Alliance leader, then it's not impossible for him to become the Lord of the Sword Dynasty in the future, let alone the position of Jian Kuei, Confuzi muttered to himself. In the sky, a huge ship crossed the void. It was the ship of Sacred Cliff College. Yi Guqin took the ship to the location of Sacred Cliff College. Along the way, Mu Xingzu stuck close to Yi Guqin and did not leave his side at all. After all, she had heard that Yi Guqin had died. Now that she had regained what she had lost, one could imagine how Mu Xingzu felt. It was reasonable for her to act like this. This made Han Lingxian feel a little jealous. Yi Guqin did not mind. After all, Yi Guqin was still able to be with his old friends in an unfamiliar dynasty. This made him sigh. I wonder how the people of the sword sect are doing? Yi Guqin sighed in his heart. Yan Chang'e, Yan Wushuang, Ji Ling, Chu Qingqi, and Yi Xie flashed past one by one. Yan Wushuang and the others have passed the preliminaries. They should be participating in the prodigy battlefield. I can see them then, Yi Guqin thought to himself. When they arrived at the prodigy battlefield, the name of the sword sect's Yi Guqin would reappear in the world. Yan Wushuang and the others would also know that Yi Guqin was not dead. He was still alive and even stronger. There's also Master Feng, Hongxue, Su Jianshi. Yiguchen was most apologetic towards these three people. Yiguchen did not know what happened to Feng Manlu. He thought that Feng Manlu had already fallen. Master, I will definitely avenge you. Hongxue, one day I will go to the Immortal Valley to find you and Su Jianshi. Within 3 years, I will step into the Heavenly Godsword Sect's mountain gate and find you. Yiguchen's eyes were cold. He needed to grow quickly, and the Sword Dynasty's Sacred Cliff College was the best place for Yiguchen to grow. After a few days, Yiguchen finally arrived at the location of Sacred Cliff College. Sacred Cliff College was located in the Divine Cliff Ridge of the 360 Ridges. The entire ridge was named after Sacred Cliff College. After entering the Divine Cliff Ridge, Yiguchen finally saw Sacred Cliff College after a few hours. Sacred Cliff College was not built in the city, but in a paradise. Yiguchen looked around and saw an undulating mountain range. Clouds and mist were rising and falling, and the cliffs were strange peaks. The mountains were beautiful, and the clouds were scattered. It was a blessed land of immortals. At least in the Saint Origin dynasty, it was impossible to find a paradise with such abundant spiritual qi. There were many palaces and pavilions in the Blessed Enclave. Many figures could be seen flashing through them. This paradise is called the Divine Cliff Paradise. It's where Sacred Cliff College is located. Bei Xian Elder saw the surprise in Yiguchen's eyes. He could not help but puff out his chest and smile proudly. This paradise was probably one of the few things Sacred Cliff College was proud of. It is indeed a paradise for cultivation. Yiguchen could not help but say, "Of course." After all, Sacred Cliff College was the first college established in the Sword Dynasty. Bei Xian Elder could not help but sigh as he recalled the glorious past. Oh, Sacred Cliff College had such a past? Yiguchen raised his eyebrows. Chapter 920. Yiguchen didn't know much about the 5 great colleges. However, he knew that Sacred Cliff College was ranked at the bottom among the 5 great colleges. Although the Sword Dynasty can't be compared to those hegemon-level forces with tens of thousands of years of history, we still have a long history. When the Sword Dynasty was first established, Sacred Cliff College was already established. After that, the other 4 colleges were established on the basis of Sacred Cliff College. Bei Xian Elder was quite proud of this period of history. Now, Yiguchen paused. Sigh, it's all because of those fake saint families. Forget it, you'll know when the time comes. Bei Xian Elder was a little dispirited when he mentioned this. Yiguchen saw this and didn't ask any more questions. Anyway, he would know what he needed to know in the future. The ship stopped outside the Holy Cliff Cave, and everyone disembarked. Bei Xian, I'll leave these people to you. After Elder Imei finished speaking, he floated away. Everyone follow me. Bei Xian Elder waved his hand. Yiguchen and the others followed Bei Xian Elder into the Holy Cliff Cave. As a famous treasure land of the Sword Dynasty, the Holy Cliff Cave was full of spirit qi, and precious herbs and rare flowers were everywhere. Supreme-grade precious herbs could be seen everywhere. Even Yiguchen was speechless when he saw this. The Hua family and the other aristocratic families are very jealous of this Holy Cliff Cave. Bei Xian Elder sneered. Yiguchen's eyes dimmed. It seemed that Sacred Cliff College wasn't completely safe. Not long after, Yiguchen saw 2 towering mountains in front of him. One of the mountains had the word Divine carved on it, and the other had the word Cliff carved on it. Between the 2 strange peaks, there was a huge ancient mountain gate. At this moment, inside the mountain gate, there was a large crowd of people. They were obviously the disciples of Sacred Cliff College. Looking at the crowd, Yiguchen sighed. Although Sacred Cliff College was ranked last among the 5 major colleges, there were still quite a number of prodigies among them. Is that the sword demon Duguubai? He doesn't seem to have 3 heads and 6 arms. That Duguubai is so handsome. I heard that he was called the sword demon, but I thought he was just a rough man with a scar on his face. As soon as Yiguchen appeared, he immediately caused a commotion among many Sacred Cliff College disciples. Some of the female disciples looked at Yi Guchen with sparkling eyes. In just a few days, the news of what had happened in the Sword Sovereign's ruins had spread throughout the Sword Dynasty. The name of the Sword Demon had completely spread throughout the Sword Dynasty. Of course, Yi Guchen's arrogance also spread along with the name of the Sword Demon. Is there a need to cheer for someone who has only been in Sacred Cliff College for 3 months? At this moment, a slightly discordant voice sounded. The cheers all around quieted down. It was obvious that this person was not an ordinary person. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows slightly. What this meant was that after 3 months, Yi Guchen would not be able to pass Mount St. Crossing and would be transferred to Tensei College. Yi Guchen looked over and saw that it was a young man in a purple shirt with an extraordinary bearing. There was a golden badge pinned to his chest. A disciple with a golden badge, Yi Guchen muttered. He is the prodigy of the Jiang family, Jiang Yan. He is ranked 17th on the sword ranking, Mu Xingzu said. The Jiang family? The first person Yi Guchen thought of was Jiang Fengyan. It seemed that this Jiang Yan was related to Jiang Fengyan. Jiang Yan first glanced at Yi Guchen, then turned to Mu Xingzu with a faint smile on his face. Welcome to Sacred Cliff College, Miss Mu. Mu Xingzu did not respond. Miss Mu, it is not good to have an arrogant and ignorant person as your master, Jiang Yan said. As a member of the Jiang family, Jiang Yan naturally sided with Jiang Fengyan. Everyone knew that Jiang Fengyan was pursuing Mu Xingzu. Therefore, Jiang Yan did not like Yi Guchen. Enough, stop talking, Bei Xin Elder said. Apart from the Holy Emblem disciples, the Gold Emblem disciples had the highest status. Even as an elder, he could not order Jiang Yan around. Not to mention that Jiang Yan had the backing of the Jiang family. Okay, I will stop talking. Anyway, we will see in 3 months, Jiang Yan said with a faint smile. Right at this moment, another beautiful figure appeared. It was a woman in a long black dress. She was tall and slender, and her black hair was tied up, revealing her slender neck. She also had a gold emblem on her chest, which represented her identity as a Gold Emblem disciple. Although her face was not extremely beautiful, it was delicate and embellished with a hint of coldness. Seeing this woman, the surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples automatically parted. The woman in the black dress walked to Yi Guchen without hesitation. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. Was she targeting him again? Dugubai, is it? The woman in the black dress asked coldly. That's right, Yi Guchen said. You are too selfish, the woman in the black dress said. What do you mean? Even with Yi Guchen's personality, he was amused. He thought that this woman was also a heavenly talent and might be targeting him. However, he did not expect that this woman would say that he was selfish. You have extraordinary talent. If you grow up in the future, you will be a great help to Sacred Cliff College. However, you are arrogant and ignorant. In 3 months, you will challenge the St. Crossing Mountain. If you fail, you will transfer to Tensei College. Since you chose the Divine Cliff Academy, you shouldered the responsibility of being a disciple of the Divine Cliff Academy. However, for your own selfish reasons, you let yourself fall into a gamble that you were sure to lose, causing my Divine Cliff Academy to lose a genius disciple. Tell me, if this isn't selfish, then what is? The woman in the black dress questioned him repeatedly. Yi Guchen was speechless. This woman in the black dress was quite eloquent. Yi Guchen did nothing wrong, but the woman made it sound as if he was extremely selfish. As the woman's voice faded, the spectating disciples of the Divine Cliff Academy also quieted down. He looked at Yi Guchen with a doubtful look in his eyes. No one doubted Yi Guchen's strength. After all, he defeated Hua Xingjie and the others. However, it was indeed a little ignorant to say that he could challenge the St. Crossing Mountain. That's enough, Ling Moin. Bei Xian Elder also had a headache. Mu Xingzu couldn't stand it anymore. She stood up and shouted, "What is this? Is this moral blackmail? Master should make the choice himself." Moreover, with Master's talent and strength, other colleges would be fighting to recruit Master even if he didn't choose Tensei College. Why must Master come to Sacred Cliff College? Yi Guchen might not care about Ling Moyin's questioning. However, Mu Xingzu couldn't stand Ling Moyin slandering Yiguchen. Ling Moyin was at a loss for words. Indeed, with Yiguchen's talent, he chose Sacred Cliff College because he thought highly of Sacred Cliff College. Master, since Sacred Cliff College doesn't welcome you, why don't you go to Tianxian College with Xingzhu? I'm sure Dean Wu Hongyan will also welcome you. Mu Xingzu held Yiguchen's hand and was about to leave. Hey, my lady, don't go. Bei Xian Elder saw this and hurriedly stopped her. Yiguchen was the winner of the 5 academies selection. If he was tricked into Tianxian College, it would be a big loss. Although it was very likely that Yiguchen wouldn't be able to stay in Sacred Cliff College after 3 months. But what if Bei Xian Elder couldn't bear this torment? Chapter 921. Shut up, all of you. If anyone dares to spout nonsense again, don't blame me for being merciless. Bei Xian Elder scolded Ling Moyin, Jiang Yan, and the others. Then, he turned to face Yiguchen and said, My young friend, please don't take offense. Sacred Cliff College welcomes you with open arms. From beginning to end, Yiguchen's expression was extremely calm. He was not angered by Jiang Yan, Ling Moyin, and the others' provocation. Of course, I don't mind, Yiguchen said casually. To be honest, the 5 major colleges did not make much of a difference to him. Yiguchen did not need to be taught. He only needed resources and a place to grow. It was the same everywhere. However, the sword monk Xuanlian, who ranked 4th on the sword ranking list, was also in Sacred Cliff College. Yiguchen did not forget to ask him some questions. All right, all the new students can rest for 3 days. 3 days later, the admission ceremony will be held and you will be ranked, Bei Xian Elder said. Yiguchen's eyes lit up when he heard this. He had climbed to the top of the mountain. If there were no accidents, he would definitely become a Silver Emblem disciple. Moreover, he had pulled out the 9-dragon Thunder Prison Sword. It was not impossible for him to become a Gold Emblem disciple. Disciples of different ranks would receive different amounts of resources. Yiguchen was currently in a state of poverty. This was the time when he needed resources. Ling Moyin snorted coldly. Her beautiful eyes glanced coldly at Yiguchen before she left. See you in 3 days. Jiang Yan smiled faintly and also left. He had heard that Sacred Cliff College would not give Yiguchen any special treatment. In other words, Jiang Yan expected Yiguchen to become a Silver Emblem disciple at most. As for becoming a Gold Emblem disciple, it was not that simple. Su Fan, take our young friend Dugu and the others to a temporary place to stay and wait for the admission ceremony in 3 days, Bei Xian Elder said. Yes, everyone. Please follow me. There was a silver badge pinned on his chest. Clearly, he was a Silver Emblem disciple. A Silver Emblem disciple's status in the academy was not low. After all, there were only a few Holy Emblem disciples and Gold Emblem disciples. Below them were the Silver Emblem disciples. With Yiguchen's talent and strength, it was certain that he would become a Silver Emblem disciple. Therefore, when facing Yiguchen and the others, Su Fan did not put on any airs. Seeing that Yiguchen and the others were led away, the rest of the Sacred Cliff College students also dispersed. However, they also wanted to know what kind of status Sacred Cliff College would give to the Sword Demon who caused a huge commotion in the Sword Supreme ruins. He should be a Silver Emblem disciple. After all, Dugubai passed the peak of the Thunder Prison Mountain. I don't think so. He might be a Gold Emblem disciple. A Gold Emblem disciple? That's too fast, isn't it? What do you mean by fast? Who knows, he might become a Holy Emblem disciple in 3 months. Are you mocking the Sword Demon? On the other hand, Su Fan led Yiguchen and the others on a quiet path. He looked at Yiguchen and hesitated. In the end he said, Brother Dugu, I hope you won't hold a grudge against senior sister Ling. Oh? Yiguchen raised his eyebrows slightly. Why can't he? That woman is so mean. Can't he hate her? Mu Xingzu said with slight displeasure. Mu Xingzu would become very sensitive whenever something related to Yiguchen was involved. Sigh, actually, senior sister Ling is also a pitiful person. You must have heard of her brother. His name is Ling Yamoshu. Su Fan sighed. Ling Emoshu, the former Holy Emblem disciple of Sacred Cliff College, ranked 10th on the sword leaderboard? Mu Xingzu said in surprise. Han Lingxian, Yan Cho Ku, and the others were also surprised. I'd like to hear the details, Yiguchen said. Then, Su Fan told Yiguchen some things. It turned out that Ling Moyin and Ling Emoshu were a pair of siblings. Both of them were talented. Of course, Ling Emoshu was stronger. Before the sword monk Xuanlian came to Sacred Cliff College, Ling Emoshu was the strongest genius of Sacred Cliff College, ranked 10th on the sword leaderboard, a disciple of the Holy Emblem and a Divine Palace expert. At that time, Ling Moyin's personality was completely different from now. Under the protection of Ling Emoshu, she was innocent, gentle, and amiable. Then what happened later? Yiguchen was slightly interested. Every year, the 5 academies hold the 5 Academies Grand Tournament. In one of the 5 Academies Grand Tournament, senior brother Ling Emoshu faced Hua Wuxiu. In the end, Su Fan sighed deeply. I know that Ling Moshu's right arm was forcibly severed by Hua Wuxiu. Furthermore, his divine palace was destroyed. Henceforth, he became a cripple, Mu Xingzhu said. That's right. After that, senior brother Ling Moshu drank all day and was dispirited. As his sister, senior sister Ling was under a lot of pressure. She also cultivated madly and wanted to take revenge even in her dreams. She wanted to lead the Divine Cliff Academy and completely suppress the Heavenly Saint Academy. You can imagine how much pain senior sister Ling was in. After that, her personality changed drastically. She became cold and mean. Su Fan shook his head and sighed. I see. Yiguchen nodded slightly. Even Mu Xingzu and the others did not say much. Ling Moyin's experience was indeed lamentable. Anyone who saw a loved one who used to protect them become a cripple and decadent person would suffer great pain. I hope Brother Dugu doesn't blame senior sister Ling, Su Fan said. Don't worry. I don't care. Yiguchen smiled. Even if Su Fan did not say these words, Yiguchen would not have cared. That's good. Su Fan smiled in relief. Ling Emoshu. If there's a chance, I'd like to meet him, Yiguchen thought to himself. Since Ling Emoshu was ranked 10th on the sword list and a disciple of the Holy Emblem, his strength should be extraordinary. Yiguchen was considering whether he could help Ling Emoshu get out of the abyss of decadence. After all, Yiguchen and his master, Feng Manlu, had their cultivations destroyed. However, he had also walked out a path of martial arts that belonged to him. Yiguchen believed that with his vision, he would definitely be able to enlighten Ling Emoshu. At that time, Ling Moyin would no longer target him. Then, Su Fan led Yiguchen and the others to their temporary residence. You're only staying here temporarily. After the admission ceremony, you'll be assigned different cave residences, Su Fan said. Thank you. May I ask if the sword monk Xuanlian is in the academy? Yiguchen asked. Yes. Where is my senior brother? Kongkong asked. Senior brother Xuanlian is out on a mission. After all, in our academy, we don't raise flowers in a greenhouse. All the disciples go out to experience life and death battles, Su Fan said. I see. Thank you, brother Su Fan. Yiguchen cupped his fists. He was not in a hurry. Then, Su Fan briefly introduced the cultivation grounds of Sacred Cliff College to Yiguchen. For example, the Sword Soul Cave, the Spirit Gathering Pavilion, the Elixir Pond in the Divine Abode, and so on were all good places to improve a martial artist's cultivation. Of course, the most mysterious cultivation ground of Sacred Cliff College is the Seven-Sword Ancient Tower. When Su Fan mentioned the Seven-Sword Ancient Tower, his tone became solemn. Seven-Sword Ancient Tower? Yiguchen's eyes flashed. He noticed from the corner of his eye that Mu Xingzu's expression changed slightly. Chapter 922. Brother Dugu, you should know that Sacred Cliff College was the first and oldest college in the Sword Dynasty. The Seven-Sword Ancient Pagoda has existed since the founding of Sacred Cliff College. Su Fan smiled. It's that old? Yiguchen was slightly surprised. Rumor has it that the seven-sword ancient pagoda has existed since the founding of the Sword Dynasty. Sacred Cliff College expanded outwards with the seven-sword ancient pagoda as the center, Su Fan said. How can I enter the seven-sword ancient pagoda? Yi Guchen was interested. It's not that easy to enter the seven-sword ancient pagoda. Only the disciples of the Holy Emblem are qualified to enter. However, in the past, the disciples of the Holy Emblem have only entered the outer pagoda. No one has ever entered the inner pagoda, Su Fan said. I see. What's so special about the seven-sword ancient pagoda? Yi Guchen continued asking. The outer pagoda is rumored to contain many opportunities in the way of the sword. The disciples of the Holy Emblem who entered the outer pagoda all improved greatly without exception. As for the inner pagoda, even the disciples of the Holy Emblem could not enter, so no one knows what's inside, Su Fan said. I see. Thank you for your explanation. Yi Guchen smiled. He had not yet become a disciple of the Holy Emblem, so he did not need to think too much about it. After that, Su Fan left. Yi Guchen and the others found a place to stay and waited for the admission ceremony in 3 days. In a quiet room, Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu were in the same room. Mu Xingzu had not had the chance to catch up with Yi Guchen because of the previous incidents. She did not want to leave Yi Guchen's side. Although Mu Xingzu had grown up on her own during this period of time, she was still Yi Guchen's pillar. However, Yi Guchen was still the pillar of support in her heart after all. At this moment, she was displaying the coquettish and dependent attitude of a young girl. Yi Guchen roughly explained what had happened after Mu Xingzu left. Mu Xingzu listened with trepidation. It's great that the senior brothers and sisters of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest are still safe. Mu Xingzu heaved a sigh of relief. If nothing unexpected happens, we should meet again at the battlefield of Heaven's Favorites, Yi Guchen said with a faint smile. The people from the Sword Sect's Tower Forest were brought back to the Swallow Cloud dynasty by Yen Chang'e. In the future, they would meet again in the battlefield of prodigies. When senior sister Yen and the others see us, they will definitely be so surprised that they won't be able to close their mouths. Mu Xingzu said with a smile. Yen Wushuang. Yi Guchen muttered with a slightly complicated expression. His heart was filled with guilt toward Su Jianshi and Sidu Hongxue. He had indeed neglected the fact that there was a girl who was worried about him. Shaking his head slightly, Yi Guchen got rid of the distracting thoughts. After all, they would meet again when the time came. At this moment, the blue crystal hanging around Mu Xingzu's neck suddenly flashed. A gentle, graceful, and beautiful figure appeared. She was wearing a blue robe that was translucent. Her features were picturesque and her skin was as white as snow. It was Ying Ning. Senior Ying Ning, long time no see. Yi Guchen smiled faintly. Mu Xingzu was able to grow at such a fast speed and rise in the Sword Dynasty. Ying Ning's contribution was definitely not negligible. I didn't expect you to have such a complicated experience. Also, I feel a powerful soul pressure in your body. Ying Ning's eyes were deep as she looked at Yi Guchen. An azure-robed figure also appeared behind Yi Guchen. Interesting. You're not a tribulation saint yet, but you can condense an origin soul. The azure-robed figure was naturally Su Qingyu. He also looked at Ying Ning with some interest. A saint's origin soul. Ying Ning's eyes were filled with shock. Primordial spirits could only be condensed by heavenly tribulation saints. She had an origin soul because of her 8th grade talent, the immortal soul pearl. Although Su Qingyu's origin soul had no power left, it was still a saint's origin soul. Facing such an existence, Ying Ning also felt a great pressure. Fortunately, Su Qingyu did not have any pressure or killing intent towards Ying Ning. Otherwise, Ying Ning's origin soul might collapse. After Yi Guchen's explanation, Mu Xingzu and Ying Ning also learned about Su Qingyu. They both let down their guard. Yi Guchen, you need to enter the seven-sword ancient tower, Ying Ning suddenly said. Oh, senior, you mean? Yi Guchen paused. The seven-sword ancient tower might have some connection to Sky Mountain, Ying Ning said solemnly. Is the Sword Dynasty also related to Sky Mountain? Yi Guchen was slightly surprised. Yiguchen knew that Ing Ning had been searching for traces of Sky Mountain, because her former lover was related to Sky Mountain. Moreover, Yiguchen believed that he and his father were also inextricably linked to Sky Mountain. One mountain, one sea, and one immortal valley. What kind of existences are the three hidden forces? How am I related to Sky Mountain? Yiguchen murmured to himself. He always felt that the three hidden forces were not that simple. Also, how was the sword sect of the Nantian region related to the three hidden forces? Who was the mysterious hand that grabbed the Celestial Emperor sword in the Tianhuang Plains? Was it Little Fatty's mysterious master, Xing Tianyi, or Yi Tianxing? And why did the 9 immemorial swords that hung in the sky of the 9 regions exist? Yiguchen felt that the entire Nantian region, and even the 9 regions, hid a huge secret. Of course, with Yiguchen's current strength, he could not find out too much. His only goal now was to become stronger and participate in the battlefield of prodigies. In the future, he would destroy the Divine Sword Sect, Starry Sword Pavilion, and other forces. I know. If I have the chance to enter the Seven-Sword Ancient Tower, I will definitely find out, Yiguchen said. He could not think too much now. He could only take one step at a time. Then, Mu Xingzu left reluctantly. She knew that Yiguchen still had to cultivate. Only Yiguchen was left in the room. It's time to completely control the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Even if it was only 2 or 3 days, Yiguchen did not waste any time. He took out the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Suddenly, there seemed to be a slight explosion in the void. This sword is not bad, Su Qingyu said lightly. Maybe it can be repaired, but it's too difficult to repair a Tribulation Divine weapon. Yiguchen shook his head slightly. Although he had inherited the legacy of Forged Sky Edge, it was still too difficult for him to repair the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Yiguchen then began to completely blood bond with the Quasi-Tribulation Divine weapon. He dripped a drop of blood essence into the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison and began to refine it. Vaguely, Yiguchen seemed to hear 9 dragon roars. The 9-headed dragon demon soul was hidden in the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison. Not only that, but a ball of 7-colored lightning shot out from the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison and entered Yiguchen's body. 7-colored profound lightning. Yiguchen's eyes narrowed. 7-colored profound lightning was the fusion of 7 different types of lightning. It was extremely powerful. Even among profound lightning, it was the most powerful and explosive type of lightning. As soon as the 7-colored profound lightning entered Yiguchen's body, Yiguchen immediately began to refine it. If it was an ordinary person, the 7-colored profound lightning would have shattered his body as soon as it entered his body. However, Yiguchen's body was too strong. He immediately used his ancient god body and began to refine the 7-colored profound lightning. At this time, the 7-colored profound lightning caught the purple lightning, ghastly lightning, and void-level profound lightning and wrapped them in it. It began to devour and refine them. Could it be that he is about to evolve? Yiguchen was also surprised. Chapter 923. The heavenly fire and heavenly thunder were magical powers nurtured by heaven and earth. When they collided with each other, unless their powers were equal, the only outcome was to be merged, devoured, and refined. Just like how the heart demon flame had devoured the heavenly sun Xianming fire. The 7-colored dark thunder had also started to merge with the purple lightning ghastly thunder and the extreme void dark thunder. Yiguchen's body surface was filled with various colors of lightning, supporting Yiguchen as if he was the Lord of Thunder. His body was once again tempered by the thunder. Yiguchen, you can take this opportunity to get a preliminary understanding of the lightning sword principle left in the sword, Su Qingyu reminded him. Indeed, the heavenly thunder is merging in my body. I can comprehend the lightning sword essence in the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison at the same time. Yiguchen's eyes lit up. The merging of the heavenly thunder would help Yiguchen comprehend the essence of the thunder. He immediately sat cross-legged on the ground, closed his eyes, and started to comprehend. Countless lightning flashed in the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison sword, and the lightning seemed to condense into countless mysterious and profound thunder ancient characters. That was the lightning sword principle that the previous owner of the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison, Lightning Sword Reverend, had comprehended. Yi Guqin immersed his mind and started to comprehend the lightning sword principle. Of course, the lightning sword principle was a peerless sword principle and it was not easy to comprehend. Moreover, the lightning sword principle was considered to be one of the most powerful sword principles in terms of attacking power. In terms of overbearing destruction and destructive power, it was even more powerful than the Azura sword principle and lifeless sword principle. Yi Guqin did not expect to comprehend it immediately. He only wanted to comprehend it at the beginning. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The rolling thunder power in Yi Guqin's body finally calmed down. Yi Guqin carefully checked his body. He found that the purple lightning ghastly thunder and the extreme void dark thunder had been completely merged with the 7-colored dark thunder. The 7-colored dark thunder should be called the 9-colored dark thunder. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, dark purple, silver. There were a total of 9 colors, which represented the fusion of 9 different types of lightning into one, and the fusion of them into the domineering 9-colored profound lightning. What a powerful heavenly lightning! It is much stronger than the purple void profound lightning formed by the fusion of 2 heavenly lightnings. Yi Guqin was a little surprised. He slowly raised his hand, and the 9-colored profound bombs jumped and shot out from his fingertips. The 9-colored lightning continued to emit explosive sounds. Yi Guqin could sense that the 9-colored profound bomb was far more powerful than the purple void profound bomb. Refining such exotic thunder will make it easier for you to comprehend the lightning sword principle, Su Qingyu said. Although it's helpful, it's not that simple. Yi Guqin shook his head slightly. He had many sword daos to comprehend now. Although he had comprehended the Azura sword dao and edgeless sword dao, the 5 elemental sword intent was still some distance away from transforming into a sword dao. He had only begun to comprehend the lightning sword principle. It would take him a lot of time to reach the level of sword intent. Not to mention the creation level all creation sword dao. The all creation sword dao was even harder to comprehend than the Azura sword dao, the 5 elemental sword dao, and the lightning sword dao combined. As for the more profound selfless sword dao, Yi Guqin judged that it was definitely beyond the creation level. He had reached a supreme level of existence. There should be many treasured places in Sacred Cliff College and the Sword Dynasty that can help you comprehend the Sword Dao, Su Qingyu said. Yi Guqin nodded in agreement. That was indeed the case. The Sword Dynasty was a country of sword cultivators. How could there not be treasured places that specialized in comprehending the Sword Dao? The Sword Tomb, one of the 4 secret realms of the Sword Dynasty, was a place that specialized in comprehending the Sword Dao. In Sacred Cliff College, there were also places like the Sword Soul Cave where one could comprehend the Sword Dao. When I become a disciple, I'll go to the Sword Soul Cave and other treasured places to take a look, Yi Guqin murmured. At this moment, Mu Xingzu's voice came from outside the door. The admission ceremony was about to begin. Yi Guqin pushed the door open and walked out. Han Lingxian, Kongkeng, Yan worried guest, and the others were all there. As for Qin Paisai, Zhuo Qiuqing, and the others, they had joined Tianxian College and did not follow Yi Guqin. Please. Su Fan also came and led Yi Guqin and the others to the place where the admission ceremony would be held. The venue was on a spirit mountain in the Divine Cliff Cave. Not long after, Yi Guqin and the other newly admitted disciples were led by Su Fan to the top of the Spirit Mountain. Looking around, the entire Spirit Mountain seemed to have been flattened. At this moment, there was a huge crowd of people. They were all Sacred Cliff College disciples who came to watch the ceremony. Except for those disciples who are doing missions outside or cultivating, most of the rest are gathered here, Su Fan said with a smile. Yi Guqin looked around. These Sacred Cliff College disciples were indeed not weak. They were all above the bridge of heaven and earth. Among them, Yi Guqin saw Jiang Yan, who had targeted him that day. On the other side, Ling Moin, who was wearing a long black dress and had a cold expression, was also there. She looked at Yi Guqin with a cold gaze. Yi Guqin did not care. He looked around again and suddenly saw a disciple with a golden emblem. The disciple with a golden emblem was dressed in white. He was tall and handsome. Standing among the disciples, he was like a crane in a flock of chickens. Who is that disciple with a golden emblem? Yi Guchen asked Su Fan. That person is called Ouyang Tianji. He is ranked 13th on the sword ranking. He is from the Ouyang family. Su Fan's tone became cold. The Ouyang family? Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. The Sword Alliance has 5 pseudo-saint families. They are the Hua family, the Jiang family, the Yin family, the Shengguan family, and the Ouyang family. Although Ouyang Tianji is not the strongest genius of the Ouyang family, he is very strong, Su Fan said. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. Seemingly sensing Yi Guchen's gaze, Ouyang Tianji turned his face towards Yi Guchen. He glanced at Yi Guchen expressionlessly before withdrawing his gaze. From your tone, it seems that you have something against Ouyang Tianji? Yi Guchen asked Su Fan. He could hear the indifference in Su Fan's tone. Su Fan approached Yi Guchen and said in a low voice, "To tell the truth, Brother Dugu, Jiang Yan and Ouyang Tianji are both geniuses of the aristocratic families. I even suspect that they are spies planted in the academy by the aristocratic families." Yi Guchen nodded. It seemed that the 5 academies were also very complicated. In addition to these people, Yi Guchen also noticed some experts from Sacred Cliff College. Some of the elders who were at the same level as Bei Xian Elder were around the 3rd heaven of the Venerable Realm. There were also 5 figures sitting high in the air. Yi Guchen also knew about the 5 figures. They were the 5 temple masters of Sacred Cliff College. They were in charge of the Mission Hall, Sword Technique Hall, Elixir Hall, Divine Weapon Hall, and Punishment Hall. The cultivation of each temple master was around the 7th heaven of the Venerable Realm. In Sacred Cliff College, above the temple masters was Elder Imei, and above him was the mysterious dean of the Divine Cliff College. However, Yi Guchen did not see the dean of the Divine Cliff College and Elder Imei. Everyone, the admission ceremony has begun. The disciples who join Sacred Cliff College will be divided into different levels according to the results of the test, Bei Xian Elder said as he stepped forward. As soon as he finished speaking, the ground on the top of Spirit Mountain suddenly lit up with an array. Then, under Yi Guchen's surprised gaze, the ground began to split from the middle. A majestic array appeared, accompanied by 36 puppets. Chapter 924. Is this an Earth rank array? Yi Guchen glanced around and looked at the 36 puppets. Every single one of the puppets seemed to be made of metal, and they gave off a sense of toughness. The puppets held sharp swords in their hands. At the same time, the 36 puppets were compatible with the array on the ground. They were obviously part of the Earth rank array. However, in Yi Guchen's opinion, this array could barely be considered an Earth rank array. Its power was probably weaker than his 5 Emperors Cosmo sword array, let alone the 6 Dao Ashura sword array. This is the Tiangang sword puppet array. Although it's only close to an Earth rank array, it's enough to pose a threat to those in the divine dwelling stage. The content of this assessment is to break through the Tiangang sword puppet array. Those who can last 15 minutes in the array will be Bronze Emblem disciples. Those who can last for 2 hours will become Silver Emblem disciples. Those who can last for more than 4 hours or even barely resist the array will become Gold Emblem disciples. Bei Xian Elder announced the rules. So I have to break through the Tiangang sword puppet array? Yi Guchen mumbled. Brother Dugu, of course you don't have to. With your talent and strength, you'll undoubtedly become a Silver Emblem disciple. It's not impossible for you to become a Gold Emblem disciple, Su Fan said. Soon, the assessment began. The prodigies who had joined Sacred Cliff College began to break through the Tiangang sword puppet array. As soon as they stepped into the range of the array, the 36 sword puppets used the Tiangang sword movement technique and slashed at them together. Such a formation was more than enough to trap even the most ordinary divine dwelling experts. Not to mention the prodigies who had reached the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. None of the prodigies could achieve good results in the Tiangang sword puppet array. Ji Fan, Bronze Emblem disciple, Zhou Yi, Bronze Emblem disciple, Shen Qiu, Bronze Emblem disciple. Bei Xian Elder read them one by one. his face did not look too good. The Divine Cliff Academy is really getting worse year by year, Jiang Yan muttered to himself in a low voice. As prodigies from aristocratic families, they had no sense of belonging to Sacred Cliff College. On the other hand, Ling Moyne's already cold face seemed to have been sealed in ice. The prodigies recruited by Sacred Cliff College had always been weaker than those recruited by the other 4 colleges. As time passed, no one was able to last more than 2 hours in the Heavenly Dipper Sword Talisman formation. And during this period of time, Yiguchen was observing the Heavenly Dipper Sword Puppet Grand Array with rapt attention. As long as it was a formation, there would be rules to follow. Although Yiguchen did not specialize in Array Dao with the 5 Emperors Qiankuan Sword Array and the 6 Dao Azura Sword Array, he was no stranger to Array Dao. Furthermore, this was considered a sword array. For a sword cultivator like Yiguchen, understanding it was even easier. Next, Han Lingxian, Bei Xian Elder announced. Han Lingshuan's delicate body trembled slightly as she bit her lip. She knew her own limits. She knew that with her abilities, she could only be a bronze emblem disciple. Just as Han Lingxian was about to enter the array, Yiguchen's eyes flashed and he said, "Wait." Han Lingxian stopped in her tracks and looked at Yiguchen in confusion. Yiguchen moved closer to Han Lingshuan's ear. Han Lingxian did not know what to do. Her ears turned red and her sparkling earlobes turned pink. When Mu Xingzhu saw this scene, she was slightly surprised and pouted her lips. But she knew that Yiguchen would not do anything overboard. Bei Xian Elder, Su Fan, Ling Moyne, Jiang Yan, Ouyang Tianji, and the others were all stunned when they saw Yiguchen's actions. What is Duguwubai doing? Why is he being intimate with a beauty at this time? Is he teaching her how to break through the array? With Yiguchen's current reputation, his every move would be scrutinized by everyone. Oh, what a joke! Does he really think that he can help her pass by just giving her some pointers? Jiang Yan was dismissive. Although the Tiangang Sword Talisman array was not comparable to a true Earth-level array, it was not far off. Even a Divine Dwelling Realm expert would find it difficult to break through, let alone Yiguchen. It's futile. Ouyang Tianji also shook his head. Ling Moyne looked deeply at Yiguchen. She also wanted to know how capable this rising sword demon was. If you do this, you should be able to last until the end, Yiguchen said. I see. Han Lingxian was still in a daze. It was because Yiguchen had given her some pointers. Han Lingxian immediately had a deeper understanding of the Tiangang Sword Talisman array. Without any hesitation, she immediately stepped into the array. The 36 sword talisman puppets immediately surrounded her and tried to kill her. The sword talisman array contained the positions of the 36 stars of the Tiangang sword talisman array, as if it was the orbit of the stars in the sky. Han Lingxian was among them, and she was as agile as a fish in the water. She wasn't trying to break the formation because it was simply impossible for her to do so with her current strength. Han Lingxian only wanted to persevere for 2 hours and become a silver emblem disciple. Did the sword demon, Dugubai, really give her pointers? That's impossible. It's the sword demon's first time here. He shouldn't have come into contact with the Tiangang Jiankui array. Han Lingxian, who was only at the 5th level of the Heaven and Earth Spiritual Bridge, had persevered in the array for so long. The entire peak of Spirit Mountain was in an uproar. Bei Xian Elder was also in a daze. He could not help but look at Yiguchen. He also did not dare to believe that Yiguchen could see through the Tiangang Sword Talisman array's trajectory in such a short time and give her pointers. However, Han Lingshuan's performance was an ironclad fact. There must be something fishy. Jiang Yan did not believe it at all. Even if Jiang Fengyan was here, he would not be able to see through the Tiangang Sword Talisman array in such a short time. Under the watchful eyes of many Sacred Cliff College disciples, elders, and temple masters, 2 hours passed quietly. Han Lingxian moved back and forth in the sword array. She was already exhausted. Her true qi was depleted, and she was drenched in sweat. With a loud clang, a sword talisman puppet suddenly swung its sword. Han Lingxian could no longer resist and was directly thrown out of the sword array. Han Lingxian, A silver emblem disciple. Bei Xian elder was stunned for a moment before he shouted. No matter what, Han Lingxian had persevered in the array for so long. They could not say that she had cheated. As soon as he said that, a commotion broke out. Han Lingxian looked at Yi Guchen excitedly. There was a big difference between the treatment of a silver emblem disciple and a bronze emblem disciple. Next, there were only 3 people who had not taken the test. Yi Guchen, Kong Kong, and Yen Chou-ku. Kong Kong, Yen Chou-ku, both of you reached the upper level of the Thunder Prison Mountain. Therefore, you don't need to go through the Tiangang Sword Talisman Array. You can directly become a silver emblem disciple. As for Yi Guchen, due to your excellent performance in the selection of the 5 academies, 3 brilliant lights, and the 9 Dragon Thunder Prison, you also defeated Hua Xingjie and the others. Therefore, you can directly become a gold emblem disciple. Bei Xian elder said loudly. He's a gold emblem disciple? Elder Bei Xian's words caused another uproar among the crowd. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.